Peace to the saints. Today's lecture is a reaction to a debate on reparations between one black man and one white man. There are many lessons that we'll be able to extract. So we're going to go ahead and get into it and take a fair, balanced approach to it. And as we go through, I'm going to make some notes for the Black Code, which I'm currently compiling so that we can release it to all of you. Here we go.
You were never enslaved. I was never a slave owner. You don't deserve reparations.
And if you're a white man in America and you are suffering or you're poor, that is your misuse of your privilege.
Same if you're a black American.
How? That's impossible. If that's true.
See, this is why you're a victim. You think people are still holding you back and you're free American.
Who are you to tell black people they don't deserve some shit they built?
What did you build?
My ancestors built this country.
And so did mine.
Each one of us got paid.
Are you special?
Your
are you autistic?
Your ancestors got paid, didn't they?
Well, then you're stupid.
No, you stupid for the you just said. A civil war between people that live in the same country.
Can you listen?
Can you say something with some substance?
Are you capable of listening?
I'm capable of listening.
So then just shut up for a second.
Okay, I want you guys to track a couple things. And though I may point out things during the course of this analysis, do not think that I believe these things are relevant in your practical lives. I'm a pragmatist. I'm creating the Black Code as a guide for all of the black peoples of the earth to operate effectively as an individual and as a collective in the world as we know it. However, in watching this debate, I will point out some things which may show lapses in logic. It may show that one party is being dishonest and deceitful. It may show certain biases. That does not mean that I think this is relevant in the real world. We're just dealing right now in a neat realm of, considering truth, morality, and the like, which is not something that matters in the real world. Truth and morality are irrelevant in the real world. And the Black Codes will address the real world. Right now, we're going through an arid intellectual exploration.
Guys, we got another debate today. We got Austin off script and Bo here today. We're going to be debating reparations.
So Austin appears to be the fellow of color, and Bo appears to be the fellow without melanin. Austin Julio Broughton, and then Bo Robinson. So they both look like they're reasonably dressed up at some level. Austin has opted for the necktie. Bo is dressed down just a tad more. Let's see what these folks have to say.
If either of you guys feel like the debate gets out of hand, just raise your hand. That's why we're to debate, right? You guys did a few months ago.
Yeah, it was from
so apparently this is round two.
Instagram.
Wow.
Good, yeah.
And I'm sure.
So, yeah, it's
no, I would like sections
because I mean, right now we speak. So, yeah, it's that clip was viral. But I mean, Bo, I'll give you the floor to open up.
No, I would like to ask you a question.
So that was very strategic to yield the floor to start with, as opposed to putting forward gambit. That's actually quite smart. Then Bo essentially counters it. He doesn't take the floor to make an argument, but rather he asks a question, which is essentially pushing things back into the other fellow's court. In my Master Communicator course, I talk about strategies. These two guys, I previewed this a bit. The gentleman named Austin is no doubt more clever and effective than the fellow named Bo. He's not great, but he's pretty good. So they do use some decent strategies. If you'd like to see the best in strategies, check out the Master Communicator course.
Sure.
And just lay it out the best you can. Why do you think you deserve reparations?
Because the economic impact of slavery and Jim Crow still has a net negative impact that is demonstrably provable for Black Americans in this country today. When you look at for example, and I have some notes that I've already written down here, federal policy discrimination going as far back as just as close to the 20th century, redlining via.
So I want you guys to notice something in the way these two individuals communicate. And I would even point out to you that it is consistent that in these debates, when you see black and white consistently, and this is objective and just start tracking it starting now, the black fellow is always better based in facts, logic, history, giving meaningful examples. So he's actually approaching it in a more rational way. Now, I don't think it's going to work. And this is why people say, Marquette, are you against reparations? No, I'm not against reparations. I'm a pragmatist. I don't believe that you'll ever be given reparations, so I don't waste time with it. I'm not against it or for it. My question is, can it actually happen? No, I don't believe so. So I wouldn't waste time pursuing it. But do observe that the black fellow is consistently going to use examples, references to law, references to time periods and policy and historical happenings and statistics, whereas the white fellow is in fact arguing from a position of emotion, but he presents himself as though he's using argumentative, real bullets, real bullets. But just observe. So you'll notice he asked the black fellow a question. Black fellow has now gone into an example, also known as evidence.
Home ownership lines of credit, federal housing agency maps, systematically denied black families access to mortgages, home ownership, wealth building through property. GI Bill benefits were disproportionately inaccessible to black veterans, and median white household wealth today is 6 to 10 times that of black households, and that varies by data set per year, but the home ownership gap remains large.
So he's spoken across a number of different variables, namely how government policy has affected black people en masse. He referred to blacks within the military, he referred to real estate, which is a major wealth building tool in the West, especially the United States of America. So he's making valid arguments. Now, let's observe how it's received. And if you're having a civil dialogue, conversation, or debate, it's okay to concede that someone said something meaningful or something that is worth addressing. So let's see if the gentleman named Bo, addresses the arguments, acknowledges that they're reasonable, or makes counter arguments leveraging a similar level of fact and example.
By 30 percentage points, and these are not random disparities. They track historically enforced exclusion. And the fact of the matter is that the black people in this country did essentially free labor for 246 years via slavery. That was then compounded by another 100+ years of racial discrimination codified purely on genetics. And black people contributed over $233 billion, again, as slaves to the United States economy that we were never recompensed for. And I couldn't call my...
And I think this gentleman has made a very effective opening argument. And it was really intelligent to specifically quantify down to the dollar how much value add economically that the enslaved blacks have provided to the United States economy, which then allows you to very logically say, well, this is what we're owed. We have a bill here, or we have a debt we're here to collect, and you can look at the itemized list of why we are owed what we're owed. So that was very well presented. It was concise, it was very clear, and it's believable. Let's listen for the response.
Myself a conservative, a Republican, anything of the sort. Without,
You're not. But...
Okay, so we see the interruption. And so this is also something to track through the conversation, the microaggressions. And also remember the way that the white supremacists speak of blacks. They suggest that they have low impulse control, that they're violent, that they're vulgar. And observe the character of these two individuals. So the black fellow was speaking, white gentleman interjects to the negative.
Well, you can say that, but tell me what a Republican is.
I would say
now, this is why my Master Communicator course is absolutely necessary, because what just happened is the white fellow interjected when it was not his turn, rudely and to the negative, and he led you on what is now a red herring, but you did it to yourself. So the black fellow is now engaging the interjection of the white fellow, which has now allowed the audience to forget about the excellent points that the black guy made. Very solid data, meaningful logic, very linear. And now he's talking about the definition of a Republican. Yes, amateur hour, amateur hour. The intro was really good, but once you started exchanging punches, now you've started to crumble. That's why the Master Communicator course teaches you how to operate in the heat of the moment. That is when it's difficult. You see, when you have your prepared remarks, that's when it's easy. And now that you're essentially engaging extemporaneously and you have to think on your feet, and now you have been unsettled and taken off of track. And so there begins the fall. And it's funny because he's actually engaging someone that is his intellectual and perhaps educational inferior. And that's as suggested by the way that they comport themselves and the way they speak to the arguments. By the way, if you have any comments, questions, ties, tuition, you can use the information here to support this meaningful analysis and education. I teach you things that you can actually use today in your real life. So thank you to those who will be supporting using Stripe, Bitcoin, PayPal, or Venmo. And some of you may also use the super chat feature, which we try to use sparingly.
Republican is somebody that has conservative Christian values that would lean more towards self-regulation rather than government regulation, less taxes.
They're now talking about what a Republican is. What does that have to do with reparations? What does that have to do with Black people? What does that have to do with enslavement? What does that have to do with a historical debt? What does that have to do with the mechanisms through which the debt was created, whether it was unpaid labor, redlining, and all of these other things?
Less lobbyists, less government control. And when you're going for reparations, that's more taxes. But before we get off on that, I want to ask you.
Now that's comical. He said, before we get off on that, I want to ask you. So he didn't respond to any of the gentleman's initial arguments. In part, it's because the Black fellow did not enforce the proper flow of the conversation. The moderator is nearly non-existent at this time. And shout out to the moderator. Shout out to Sean, who runs a good business over there. I actually did an interview with Sean. Who knows when it'll come out, but do check it out when it does. And now the white fellow is asking him another question. And if you have taken the Master Communicator class, you know what the objective of that is. So far, it may appear that the Black fellow is dominating the conversation, but he's actually not. The white fellow is. Shout out to Das, comes in via Venmo. He writes, peace of the saints to the big homie. I have a few providers on my platform. He's talking about his software. Oh, and by the way, if you are taking my course, how to create apps, web applications, mobile applications with AI, no experience needed, we have another live practicum course coming up. I believe it's on the 28th. I posted it on the community tab and as well in the course itself. And for you guys who don't know, my background is in software. I've built successful tech companies. This is why when I came into YouTube, I was already very successful and well off. So I teach software because that's how I built my career, which is to say I have expertise in it. Anyways, we're going to have a session. I believe it's on the 28th. It's at 11 a.m. And just as you see me right here talking to you, this is how we do it. And then you guys will be on the screen too. We'll be going back and forth, workshopping through the technologies that you guys are building. And I'll also be showing you how to build and market your technologies. And you can ask your questions in real time. We operate it like a family and like a business. So those of you who maybe haven't had an experience in a startup or in corporate, you get to learn all of it at once, and it's in real time. It's a great experience. You'll absolutely love it. If you want to get the course, you can do so at school.com/marquette/classrooms. And also it's worth noting, I'm maybe one of the few people on YouTube who gets paid to teach before YouTube. I've gotten paid to teach at Ivy Leagues, at the business schools, at the business school at Northwestern, at schools around the world, postdocs, grad, and also Fortune 500 companies, P&G. So I actually really do this. I actually really do this in a professional capacity. So it's important to know. Anyways, carrying on. And so I'll see you guys who are already in the course, and those of you who will sign up, look forward to meeting you and getting you informed on how to use AI to make money.
Couple questions regarding your opening statement. When did redlining end? When did segregation end? That's been over 60, 70 years at this point, and you guys are still.
So right now he's asking him about specific discrete facts like dates or years, which frankly, most people won't have the answer to that. But even if he did have the answer to that, the answer to those questions is actually not important. And if you're familiar with the logical fallacies, and mind you, they're relevant. Some of them are a matter of opinion. Some people take this stuff as dogma or gospel. This is a Eurocentric perspective, and I was raised in the West, but some of the Eurocentric perspectives I don't find to be valid. The idea that you should not interrogate and investigate the speaker, I think that that's invalid. People often use the claim of, ad hominem or circumstantial attacks. And I think it's important to explore who is speaking, why they're speaking, and if they're qualified. Because when we have these conversations on YouTube or in the public, these are not intellectual academic debates at Oxford for the purpose of, flexing our brains. These are conversations that have real world impacts, and the persons who are speaking may be those who can grab power and exercise it. And so it is important that we not only destroy the argument in every case, but in some cases, we also destroy the person. That is the fact. And I'll have to find a good name for that so we can immortalize that perspective. Anyways, I say all that to say this. The white fellow says to him, well, what year did redlining end? What year did this or that end? Well, we'd have to say, well, does the year matter? If it ended recently or ended a long time ago, would that decide if we can get reparations? So that's actually not a question to answer. You'd have to question the foundation of his question, which is to say, well, what is your logic? Is your logic suggesting that the time of the discrimination impacts if we get reparations or how much reparations we get? Please do tell. And then once he answers that, then you go from there. And so this is a strategy quite high level. And I don't think that the black fellow is going to be able to address that properly. I think he's probably going to fall into this poorly laid trap and just answer the guy's questions.
Talking about it. So I just curious to know,
Well,
with those things ended and you actually never experienced them.
Right.
So I'd like to know why.
So you'd have to stop him right there. So you ask me two questions and then you start talking. You have to stop talking so I can answer your questions. So the black fellow is not very good at controlling the conversation at all. And that will cost you. It'll cost you in terms of being able to establish your position. It'll cost you in the way that you're perceived.
Why you deserve reparations. I understand why they might deserve reparations, but I want to know why you do.
And that's another vulnerability that the white fellow exposed in his argument. You say, oh, well, they deserve reparations. Who are they? Please define they. And then why do they deserve reparations? And then once the white fellow identifies why they deserve reparations, then you would take those points and apply them to yourself in the present day, and then you would have checkmated him. Now, you may win the argument, but you're not going to get reparations after winning the argument, no matter how elegantly you do it. I have no doubt that I can obliterate anyone on a reparations argument, no matter which side of the argument I'm on, because I have superior wit and argumentative ability. But no matter who wins the argument, did you win the negotiation? And also, can you enact actions and consequences? And in the black codes, which I'm putting together now, there's one particular lesson title. It's called Argument versus Negotiation versus Action versus Consequences. And these are critical lessons for people, men especially, all black people, to understand the differences between those.
Well, let me define. Let me first set a baseline. When I define reparations, I am not talking about getting what Dr. William Darity said that black Americans would be entitled to, which is $250,000. I think that would create a situation where the U.S. couldn't pay that debt. It's impossible. However, you just
is it? No, it actually is possible. It just may be inflationary, and then the 250K effectively means little. But more importantly, if it was paid out, I surmise that that money would be relocated to the pockets of the merchant class. Black people are not in the merchant class at a significant level, so that would be challenging. But also with this black fellow, he's a bit pedantic, and I can be sometimes too. And I think this is one of the challenges in general with actually getting movement on things. When you have people who are pedantic or academic, they're intellectual, very rarely do they also have the ability to be persuasive when speaking, and even less so do they have the ability to organize people and galvanize the masses for action. You typically don't have that person rolled all into one. And this is a kind of separation that we observed in the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, very much so a great thinker and ideologist. He put together all of the ideas of the Nation of Islam, and he wrote a fine work entitled Message to the Black Man. I have this book and many others that I recommend. If you go to amazon.com/shop/The Saint and the Sinner, there's just a lot of books there that I recommend to get you up to speed and understanding the world at a fundamental level. So that was the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was good with the ideas, and he was even better with organizing people. Then he brought on a fellow named one Mr. Little, who was renamed to Malcolm X, a name that was given to him by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And Malcolm X said that you brought me from the dead. I was spiritually dead. Everything that I have today, everything that I am, I owe to you. And they wrote his speeches, and he was the spokesman, and he was good at speaking and oration. And he was able to bring more people into the movement. He was not the ideas guy. He was not the ideologist. He was not the organizer. He was the mouthpiece. So Elijah Muhammad, the thinker, Malcolm X, the speaker, two different persons. And eventually Malcolm X betrayed the Nation of Islam, his spiritual father, and the Black movement. And then he ended up suffering the fatality of a traitor. But you rarely find those two persons in one. It's very uncommon. And if it has existed, certainly COINTELPRO or the FBI would have tried to snuff it out every chance they get. They've had programs explicitly aimed at such. So there you go. Carrying on.
Said it yourself. Segregation ended about 60 years ago. Women in the United States gained full autonomy in 1975. Martin Luther King was.
Bringing up women is only going to cause muddiness because they have their own set of issues. And also when you bring up the women, now you're dealing across racial lines, and you're also separating a component of the Black people. In fact, you'd say 50%. So that is not very wise. And so not only must you attack the arguments of the enemy, but you must also be able to defend. And so you have to be thoughtful about the ground that you give the enemy to engage you on. So I probably would not have thrown that out at all.
Killed in 1968.
They got the opportunity to vote after Black men.
Well,
you see, he seized it already on the women thing.
No, right. That's not my point. My point is that the average lifespan of a human being is around 70 to 80 years, give or take. So you just admitted that if the civil rights movement ended only 70 years ago, that means that some of the lasting generational impacts of Jim Crow.
See, he's failed to ask the other guy what would qualify for reparations for Black people. And if the guy said, well, nothing at all, then you move on to the next question is, well, what would qualify for reparations for, say, the Japanese or the Native American or the Jews? Why would they get reparations? And then you work backward from that. And if the fellow said, well, none of them deserve reparations, you say, okay, well, I'm going to leave your opinion there, and I'll go with the opinion of the American government. The American government did believe that the Native American deserved reparations. They did believe that the Jew deserved reparations and that the Japanese deserve reparations. And here are the examples of the type of reparations they got. Now, here's a chart, and we can look at this matrix and compare the sufferings of each group and try to figure out, well, why is it that this suffering matters and this suffering does not matter? It's very straightforward stuff, but again, I'm the greatest. So I don't expect everyone to be able to slice through so quickly. Shout out to Das, comes in via Venmo. He writes, I have a few providers on my platform, talking about his app that he's built as a result of my AI course. And Das is a very ambitious student. I'm very impressed with his tenacity. I know he'll be successful at whatever he chooses to do. He writes, I have a few providers on my platform who are responsive, but most are not, such as Life, C'est La Vie. I know this is hurting my business. No, that's not hurting your business. Lack of volume is hurting your business. So, if you recruit 10 providers on your platform, and the gentleman has a platform where you can order masseuse to your home or your office or hotel. So it's a booking technology for masseuse in particular. It kind of allows you to be more secure because you can escrow your funds. And they're also confident that they can actually take out the time to drive over to you because the money has been verified. So anyways, you have a volume issue. It's not that you're selecting the wrong masseuse. There will always be a conversion rate in all things. So in your case, if you have, say, 100 masseuse on your platform and only 20 are responsive, and for the platform to really be hitting, you need 200 masseuse. Now you just know that you have to reach out to 1,000, get 1,000 on there, and then you'll have a 20% conversion rate. So that there's your 200 masseuse, and they can serve your market. So it's not an issue. It's a volume problem. He further writes, do you think it is an issue with specific therapists, or do I just need to find more responsive ones? Yes, that's correct. And if you're able to identify a variable or a trait in the therapists who are responsive, then that'll allow you to better target. In the absence of knowing that, then you just have to make the volume play. Thank you for that question. And these are the kind of things I really enjoy because this has been my bread and butter since I was fairly young. Shout to Das. He writes, also, can you share a recent obstacle you overcame and how you built the mental resilience to deal with business challenges? Thank you for all of your teachings. I follow you proudly. Well, business challenges are the easiest ones to deal with because it's a process game. It's a process game. And the good news about life in general, you can never say, I've tried everything and it didn't work, because if you tried everything, something would have worked. So that's the good news about business. And more importantly, you don't have to be emotional about business, because it's not a sport where your emotions are generally going to give you the advantage. You have to be disciplined about business. And so what I'm about is getting everything that is out there for me. And I truly love myself and I believe in myself and I want the best for myself. And nothing fires me up more than seeing A, something I can't have that I really want, or B, seeing a peon outperform me. So whatever it is in your psyche that drives you, you have to be able to seize upon that. In Boss University, I talk about this. I talk about the internal world, understanding the self. I understand that I'm a deeply competitive being, deeply competitive. I really want to be on top and I feel like I deserve it. So what I do is I reach inside of myself and I pick out that emotion, and then I find a target to defeat, or I find something that I want that I can't have. And then I go after it because I truly believe that I deserve it. And it starts with beliefs. And on top of those beliefs, I use whatever emotion I can conjure up. And I get to a psychotic level of emotion that will just drive me and keep me going. For example, yesterday I told myself I had a lot of business items to deal with. I have some property item in Miami. I had some technology to rebuild, and I had a business partnership to solidify. And I said, I'm going to finish all these things before I go to sleep. And I didn't finish them till 5 a.m., but I got them done. And I stayed awake and I stayed focused. I made a promise to myself. And I also was looking at some antique cars, and I was like, I feel like I might want one. I was also looking at some custom Sprinter vans. I was like, I feel like I might want one. Price tags are crazy, right? You customize a nice Sprinter van, you know, me and the Saints, and we want to be able to pull up somewhere, about 10 of us or so. And we want the Sprinter van to be beautiful and elegant and have Wi-Fi and tables and captain chairs and LEDs and TVs embedded. And I got to pay for a driver. I was like, I need $250,000 for this. And then you're looking at the antique cars, the Rolls-Royce Corniche, or you want to do an EV conversion. You get an antique car that's ultra rare. And maybe you want to put in Tesla engine, Tesla guts in there. Or maybe you want to keep it all original, and these things are $300,000. And I already have expensive cars and expensive homes. This is going to be more money, and I don't live on credit. I live on cash money. So I said, you know, some of the things I want, whether it's flying private or a UAV, I can't afford some of these things right now, but I will not go without. I got to get to this money. And the good thing is that when you find your money machine, all you have to do is keep on investing in it. You pour more focus into it, more time. You keep trying different things. That's what it's about. I don't have time to get emotional. You don't have time to get emotional. That's why when I hear your feelings, I'm like, I don't want to hear your feelings. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care. I don't even care about my own feelings. So promise you, I don't care about yours. I don't care about my feelings very much. I care a little bit about my old lady's feelings. Not a ton, little bit, but I don't care about anyone else's. I don't have time to be emotional. I just have time to get this money. You heard me? I got time to get this money. Come on now. So that's what it is. You know, and the more time you spend lamenting, the less time you're spending producing. The more time you spend thinking, the less time you're spending earning. You understand me? Shout out to Michael. He writes, peace to the saints, coming through with the tuition. Can't wait for the black code to drop. Time to soak up this ism. Oh, absolutely. And the black code, when it drops, if you can actually abide by it, you'll see the world more clearly. And most importantly, you'll see yourself more clearly, and things will be a little bit easier. Imagine trying to play a game without knowing the rules to the game. That's what a lot of you are doing now. Shout out to Civilized Barbarian, right? Saint, I was thinking about the term people of color. These folks without melanin get red and when they're blushing, blue when they're cold, green when they're scared, and yellow when they get sick. We stay black no matter what. Is it another accusation of what they are? That was quite funny. I appreciate you sharing that. I'll have to include that in the black code. And I was tempted to call it the black laws, But I think when we say black code, perhaps people understand it more immediately what we're speaking of. So you guys will have to weigh in on that. Shout out to Michael. He writes, I have an exotic snake and drink store here in Cincinnati. Oh, snack. My apologies. I have an exotic snack and drink store here in Cincinnati. I'm terrible with AI, but I want to make a website for my store so I could sell my products online. Will your course help me with that? Absolutely. Yes, it absolutely will. But truth be told, there's a better solution I would recommend to you that'll be quicker to deploy, and it'll be very reliable. You can send me a message on wisdom.com. It is $20 per message, and I'll give you the details there. And so I want everyone to notice what I'm doing here. I don't recall what my course costs. It's not cheap. Let's say it's like $600. I don't know. You guys, it's upon you to know because you're the one who buys it. So let's say it's like $600. I could have said, yes, take my course. And then you spend $600, I get $600, and you'll get a lifetime of knowledge that you can use forever. But instead, I said, I think there's a simpler solution for what you need. Don't spend $600 that would go to me. Hold on to your money. Spend $20. Go to wisdom.com/Marquette Devon. Ask me the question there, and I will send you back the information that you need to make you more successful. And I will forego making $600 to help you. There are not very many people like that. That's why we have the Assassin, to gather the good peoples of the earth together so that we can be generous and open with one another, because out there is a cold, greedy, dishonest, dark world. And every time you go out, you have to know that that's what you're going into. Anyways, if someone would be kind enough to put wisdom.com/Marquette Devon in the chat so I can post it on the screen so folks can see where you can ask me questions. If you have quick one-offs, if you have something deeper, you should take a consultation and we can talk. Or if you want to get in the AI course, take the AI course and you'll be talking to me. It might be between 6 to 30 people on the meeting. Given the day, we have a lot of these things. We've had 10 of them already, and we'll have more. Thank you for that question, Michael. And I absolutely think you should be online with your business. May I also acknowledge Das. He writes, very funny. See, Daz, I caught you slipping right there. May I also acknowledge Pawan. He writes, peace to the saints. I sent an email regarding access to the Black Box audiobook. Okay, very good. Excellent. And the Black Box is available on audiobook, and you can access that at peaceofthesaints.com. Just click products. Now back to this debate.
Of slavery can still be felt today, which is why my grandmother would deserve reparations. She's still alive. My father, I was born in 1965. I would argue that he and my mother deserve some form of reparations, and I would argue that the children of these people deserve them. Let's be very clear that during the founding of this nation, with the passage of the Homestead Acts, 200 million acres of land were given to white European peasant farmers. They were then enhanced by giving them county agents.
Say that again.
Notice so far, you've only heard the black fellow give facts, figures, statistics, references to policy, and specific notes in American history. Conversely, the white fellow has given a grand total of 0 pieces of legitimate gambit. He has only operated in a responsive and aggressive manner. You see, it's very easy to tear down a building, but it's much harder to build one. Black fellow's been building arguments and substantiating them, whereas the white fellows just stood there and just swung haymakers at what the black fellow is building. And I promise you, it's much easier to operate in the capacity of the destroyer. And the black fellow, he is too much in the argument. Listen to me. He's in the argument instead of removing himself and looking at it from a bird's eye view and seeing what's going on. So he needs to, at some level, be able to remove himself and see the operating dynamic and say, well, hang on. I don't like the way this is proceeding. This guy's not having to provide any reasoned arguments. He's not defending his position. He's kind of just picking apart what I'm doing. Let me put him on the back foot. Let me pin him down. It's the same thing is true in business. Sometimes you don't want to get overwhelmed working in your business. Sometimes you want to work on your business. You don't want to work in it. Well, what do you mean, Marquette? Well, if I own an ice cream shop, I could be in the ice cream shop scooping ice cream for customers working in the business, or I could let somebody else scoop the ice cream and then I could work on the business. Just stand there as the manager, watch the customers, see which ice creams they like the most and think, oh, maybe we should charge more for that flavor. Oh, no one's ever ordered Rocky Road ice cream. We should get rid of it. It's spoilage. We're losing money. Or this guy, all he's doing is scooping ice cream. I'm paying him $15 an hour. What if a machine could scoop the ice cream? Work on the business. Don't be in it. Look at it from the bird's eye view and think about optimizing. Think about the big victory. Most people are not able to do that. That's the difference between a peon mentality and a boss mentality. And you really have to understand yourself and understand yourself as a boss to have the instinct to operate from that space. Once I tell this young man, the black fellow, once I explained all this to him, he could do it, but he does not currently understand it. That's why Boss University is one of my most important foundational pieces of education, because it changes the way you look at yourself and look at the world. And then you really operate from a boss's position. He's operating from a peon position respectfully. This is no insult to him. He's an impressive young man.
The Homestead Acts were passed shortly after slavery started in the United States. What they did was give away 240 million acres of land in the West and the Midwest.
They just gave them away.
Yes, in an effort to...
You mean people had to go stake their land?
So again, he's referencing the Homestead Act. He's getting the history, the facts, the figures, the stats, the statistics, and the white guy's providing none of the above. He's just like, so the Homestead Act, so they did this, or did they do that, or what year was this? He's questioning the other guys, though the other guy is ChatGPT. It's very easy. I've said this before, and I may eventually come out with a book of quotations. I have the best ones. A fool can ask more questions than 10 wise men can answer. A fool can ask more questions than 10 wise men can answer. The questioner's position is very much so the easy position. It's an advantageous position.
And fight for it.
No, I mean, the United States federal government created multiple programs to enable white European peasants to come over to the United States. They were given land grants. And on top of that, they were provided county agents to teach them how to farm. They were also then provided government subsidies to tell them not to farm any further. And the descendants of...
And again, this guy is coming with the facts, but still, you notice the adversary gives no concession and no argument, frankly. This fellow right here writes, this topic is a waste of breath. Yet he's here, yet he's watching, he's commenting. And a bit of advice to you. That's why I have the Master Communicator course. You see, you could say anything or you could be completely silent. But when a man communicates, he generally should communicate to achieve a particular impact. Generally, I don't think the impact is to have people not like you or to think that you're a fool. So you should ask yourself, if I'm here, can I be a cool breeze? Can I, attract $1? Can I attract high-level people? And that kind of thoughtless comment, these are the kind of things that cause people not to like you, whether it's online or in real life. And this is the kind of education that I give in the Master Communicator course, because the tongue is so small, but the damage it can do is so great. So think about it. And often your psychology is clearly in lack. That's why you don't have the ability to empathize. Think, well, let's say I was in Marquette's position and he's taking out his highly valuable time to elucidate some meaningful things in American history and in argumentation. And I'm saying that the topic is a waste of breath. Maybe that might get me blocked. Maybe he might just block me. And maybe I like Marquette's content and I don't want to be blocked. I want to be visible in the live chat. I want to engage with other people. So that wouldn't be to your advantage, right? Or maybe you just have common sense and you don't want to be perceived as a misanthrope, or you don't want to look hypocritical or foolish. This topic's a waste of breath, but here I am listening and watching, which would only suggest that if the topic is a waste and you're still here, your life has no meaning. You see what I'm saying? So this is why it's important to take out time to learn from people who know, men who are sophisticated, they have experience, and they know how to operate, because your inability to operate will limit your life chances. Your life chances are not only about what you know in terms of practical knowledge, but it's also about your EQ and the way you communicate what you know and who you are. That's a free jewel for you. If you could take that, it'll get you somewhere. The master communicator, of course, will get you a lot farther, but that's a start, young man.
These people to this day are still receiving federal subsidies not to farm. And these were the same people that are telling Black Americans that we need to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. Now, it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless person that we need to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps.
You still haven't explained why you deserve reparations.
Well,
now that's funny, and that's a lie. The white fellow says you haven't explained why you deserve reparations. Well, the comedy is that he explained it at the very beginning of the debate. And not only did he explain it, I think he explained it rather well and in very clear terms that even I understood and respect as someone who does not think reparations will ever happen for Black people. Oh, by the way, Pawan, check out your email. We got you squared away. And shout out to all the folks. You can get the black box if you want a paperback copy. We even have them in hardcover now. I think they're available on Amazon. Somebody let me know if you can find one. But we have them on hardcover. We also have our paperback. If you go to Amazon.com and just type in Marquette Burton, the black box. And if you want a low-cost ebook or even the audio book, you can go to peaceofthesaints.com. Click the black box or click products at the bottom. And the audiobook I actually narrate myself. Yes, I took out 20 something hours to do it. So you'll enjoy it because the voices are very authentic. And I grew up around some characters. So you're going to want to hear it as those folks really sound. Shout out to Michael. He writes, can you put the link for that in the chat, please, sir? Not even sure what that. Oh, yes. I think you're talking about risdom.com/Marquette Devon. He says that he's got the link. Fantastic. Shout out to Mr. Brown. He writes, peace of the saints, here to pay tuition just to make my name known. Shout out to Mr. Brown supporting the work. I appreciate you. And shout out to all those men who do make their name known. Shout out to Wayne, writes, peace of the saints, tuition. Wayne is always consistent coming in supporting the work. May I also acknowledge Gwinsley. He writes, peace of the saints. I've never found online debates engaging. It's usually incompetence or dark arts just to win. Oh yeah, absolutely. People's only goal is to win. And mostly they're not really concerned about what they're arguing. They're not active in that field or in that theater. Yes, you have people who might argue about politics in the Middle East, but they've never stepped foot in the Middle East. They have no actual interest in the Middle East, no assets in the Middle East, no family in the Middle East. It's just an intellectual contention. I find those to be very disingenuous. He writes, maybe I'm naive, but I'm always surprised how comfortable people are with dishonesty, even in pompous debates. Oh, well, I'll tell you this. Dishonesty is actually the order of the day. And I'd say when it comes to saving face or looking good, this is more common than not, right? Shout out to Jude. He writes, peace of the saints. Thank you for covering this. You're very welcome. And I thank you for your service. Everyone, shout out to Jude. Jude has organized our effort to fund our training center. And our training center is really the core of the education we give to lift up the masses, you know, to teach the young people of tomorrow how to be proper men and women. So I appreciate you, Jude, for helping us with that. And unlike some folks, Dr. Umar, we're very transparent about our fundraise. So you know precisely how much money we raise. And then when we allocate the funds, you'll know exactly how much money is spent down to the penny. And that's the difference between someone who has never done anything and someone like myself who's been a businessman, who's run corporations. I know how to manage finances, especially when we're talking about significant numbers. Anyways, shout out to Michael, comes in using Risdom. Okay, and he asked his question on Risdom, and I will respond and get that information to you. So I'm going to set that one aside so that I can give you that privileged information just for you. Carrying on.
Oh, you didn't allow. Well, let me first explain what my reparations program would look like. It would look like.
And so here he is again explaining the whole up to this point. All he's doing is explaining, responding, answering, defending, never on the offensive side. And this is precisely one of the major things that I'm teaching in the Black Code is like, this is not the proper dynamic for victory.
I just want to know why you think you deserve reparations.
Because I'm the descendant of people that built this country that would never pay for it.
So am I.
Did you guys notice that lie? White fella says, I just want to know why you think that you deserve reparations. And there's a strategy that he used. I'm going to write it down because I do want to highlight that for the folks in the Master Communicator course. I think it's probably already in there, but if it's not, I want to add it.
not sitting here claiming for reparations.
Wait. How are you? Who
I'm a descendant of people who built this country too.
Yeah, and right. And y'all got
I
paid
just
for
think
me
you're being a
rewind
little
that
bit of
for
a
you.
victim, and you're victimizing other people.
So this white fellow has lied, and you'll notice the black fellow, he did not catch him on the lie. I don't know if it got by him or it's just the fact that the black fellow is not as aggressive. So let's listen to the lie. I'm going to point it out in case you missed it.
because I'm the descendant of people that built this country. It would look,
Reparations.
well,
Listen.
you didn't allow. Well,
He says, why do you deserve reparations? And then maybe for the fifth time, black fellow answers it, and he answers it with a single sentence. And the white fellow says, yeah, me too. But the yeah, me too claim is actually not true. So let's listen.
let me first explain what my reparations program would look like. It would look like,
I just want to know why you think you deserve reparations.
because I'm the descendant of people that built this country that would never pay for it.
So am I.
He said, I am the descendant of people who built this country, but were never paid for it. But were never paid for it. Then the white guy says, yeah, me too. That is a lie. And everyone knows that to be a lie. Black guy doesn't catch that. Those are important things to catch. Not only because it is untrue, but also because it will deride that fellow's credibility in the argument, which you do want to do. You want to reveal that the person you're speaking against is not reasonable. They're not honest. And if they can't be honest on this small piece, how can we expect them to honestly concoct a greater argument about something that's fairly serious? So white guy's lying there. And it's the most obvious lie.
You think you deserve reparations.
I got to stop calling this fellow the white guy. I think his name is Bo.
Because I'm the descendant of people that built this country that would never pay for it.
So am I. And I'm not sitting here claiming for reparations.
Wait. How are you? Who
I'm a
did you-
descendant of people who built this country too.
Yeah, and you right, and y'all got paid
I just
for
think
it.
you're being a little bit of a victim, and you're victimizing other people by claiming that.
Okay, now this is wild. So now he's going to insult. This is actually the third time that he's insulted the black fellow. He says, I think that you are being a victim. This is an insult. To this point, the black fellow hasn't interrupted him and has not named him or name called him or insulted him. So Bo is insulting the black fellow. Then he says, not only I think you're being a victim, this is an insult, a pejorative. Then he says, and you're victimizing. Now, this is a great irony because you have the descendant of the victimizer calling you a victimizer. It's fairly ridiculous. And again, let's see if it is called out. But if we had to take an objective measure up to this point, we'd have to concede that the white fellow has brought no facts, figures, statistics, data. The black fellow has. The white fellow has made insults, has interrupted, has asked the same question several times. He's clearly arguing from an emotional standpoint. There's something emotional about what's driving him, something deeply psychological. It is clearly not based on that which is reasonable because he's provided no reason. There are no reasons. There's no evidence.
I think you're being a little bit of a victim, and you're victimizing other people.
You're victimizing other people. So right there, I would have jumped on it. I said, oh, this is a great opportunity. I'm victimizing other people, am I? That's strange. And in the case of this black fellow, he seems like a fairly gentle kind of black guy. I just said, victimizing other people. Pray tell. Would you be kind enough to just give me one single example? Usually when we're talking about making arguments, we'd like to identify a trend or establish several data points. But if you just give me one single example of how I have victimized someone, because I don't think we're familiar with one another, so please do tell me something about myself that I don't know. I'll wait.
By claiming that you deserve something that you were never a victim of.
So by claiming that I deserve something, I've victimized someone. Gee, I don't think you know the definition of the word victimize. That's a stretch. In fact, that stretch that you're making constitutes a lie. You're lying about me. That would be lie number 2, claiming that I victimized someone. But it's weird that you say victimize someone because I'm really talking about the United States government. Can an individual victimize the United States government and someone so powerless as me, an individual? I mean, it's very ridiculous. You'd have to agree.
So let me ask you this question.
Up, he missed it. So now he's going. So let me ask you this question. So now he's going on to something else. Now this better be really, really good. I doubt that it is. I think he missed a huge opportunity here. And it's not uncommon that people miss great opportunities. And this is why, even though I always research before I have a conversation such as this, I don't need to, because I'm just so much quicker than everyone else, especially in the heat of warfare. I thrive there. I feel comfortable there. This guy is not like that. He's more so the you got to prepare and, just real straight-laced, academic, formulaic, uniform kind of personality. And there's nothing wrong with that. He kind of has the politician feel to him. Shout out to Melvin, supporting the work. He writes, tuition, peace, and saints, love and respect. Absolutely. Shout out to Joshua, came in a strong way. He writes, paying what I owe. Thank you for your wisdom. Peace of the saints came in via PayPal. I appreciate you. Shout out to the real ones. Shout out to those men who stand up and make their name known. You are all appreciated.
Can you refute anything that I said from a legal perspective?
It's not about refuting it. It's about whether you deserve it.
No, actually, you fool. This is a debate. It's 100% about refuting it. And that's where we see that this fellow has low IQ. And this is very common. And this is the arrogance of the white collective, particularly the conservatives. They seem to overestimate themselves. They're of modest intelligence and sometimes low intelligence. I think this guy might be a candidate, but they think that they're brainiacs. This doofus is in the midst of an actual debate. He was asked to refute an argument, which is kind of what we're here for. And he says, no, it's not about refuting arguments. What? That's actually exactly what it's about. It's kind of like the definition of what it's about. It's like going to a bake-off, and then I ask you like to bake a cake or a pie, and you say, well, this is not about baking cakes or pies. This is about who has the best cake or pie. I'm like, yes, but you have to bake the cake for us to assess that. That was truly brainless. I'm almost wondering if his family went through hundreds of years of slavery, because it seems as though they were systematically denied education.
Are you a Christian, Bo?
Yes.
Oh,
okay. So is it?
And again, we see with the black male, and this is why the black codes are so important, because it talks about understanding yourself as a black individual and the black collective as it is today, and then where you need to get to psychologically as an individual and as a collective. And we can see that this individual is weak, defensive, non-aggressive. And because of that, he never once goes on the offensive. When he has the prey right there to be devoured, when he has the other pugilists on the ropes, he fails to start swinging for the fences. So he just goes on to another topic. When he's right there where he has won, he goes on to another place where he hasn't won. It's annoying.
It written. So since we're Christians, this is interesting.
So,
since we are Christians, see, we're going to talk about religion broadly in the black codes. We're going to talk about Judaism, Christianity, Islam. We're going to talk about black philosophers, black heroes. We're going to go through all of that. And what does it mean? It will very much so be eye-opening for those who can accept this truth.
Bo?
yes.
Okay. So is it written? Can you refute anything that I said from a legal perspective?
It's not about refuting it. It's about whether
No, it's entirely about refuting it. But the other weird thing that you'll observe is this fellow Austin says from a legal perspective. Now, I think that's actually quite interesting, because a legal perspective, legal would reference the government. They create the laws, they enforce the laws. These are the same laws that actually allowed for enslavement, allowed for Jim Crow. These would be the laws that are unfavorable for the blacks. So in as much as that is the case, it's actually strange that you appeal to an authority which has been one that historically does not favor you. And that's why I said this guy's kind of like a politician type. And these kinds of blacks are very much so conflicted, because it's like they believe in the system. They act like they're so pro-black and so strongly black, just like Ilmar Ohan, whatever her name is, a Somali woman, or even the Kamala Harris. And, they're all married to white guys. Or even Don Lemon. He's a dude also married to a white guy. And they're so pro-black, but they're married to white folks. Or they're so strong in black ideology, but they have the same ideology as a white Christian. They were enslaved by white Christians. And after they were enslaved, they were hunted by white Christians, the Klan. And so you find consistently that there is this contradiction within them. They're lost. And it is these bits of confusion that we clean up with the black codes. So you will find this to be very freeing if you can handle the knowledge. And I challenge you all to go into it with an open mind, ready to be a canvas that is painted on with strokes of a brush that you've never seen before. When we encounter new ideas, sometimes our minds start to close off rather than open up. And I just want to encourage you guys to be ready for that.
You deserve it.
Are you a Christian, Bo?
Yes.
Okay. So is it written? So since we're
So again, he keeps on going deeper into the white supremacy matrix. Refute legally, meaning appeal to the American government, the white supremacist structure that has held my people in bondage. Let's appeal to their authority, their legal and moral authority. Then he leaves that one and he says, well, are you a Christian? Oh, me too. Now let's appeal to white Jesus and the Bible that we know that was written by a white guy named King James, and we read it in English, the language of the colonizer, even though supposedly it wasn't originally written in that language, and it was written in another language and was translated, and then we finally have it here. Let's argue based on Christian values, even though the Christians are the ones who enslaved us and created this entire problem. You see, he does not understand the superstructure that he's within, and his mind has been bent so badly that he feels he has to go into the house of the enemy. His arguments are not valid just in a world of pure logic. He goes deeper into the house of the enemy, trying to find something there to validate him and validate his arguments. You see, he's made valid arguments, but he himself as an individual, this black fellow, he doesn't feel valid because he's not stood on anything he said. He's not stood on anything. And he's also not made Bo stand on any of his rebuffs. He's just let him walk away every time. Come on now. Come on now.
Christians, this is interesting. So is it not written that you should do unto others that you as you would have them do unto you?
Yes.
So if
you think
but what does it matter, buddy? What does it matter? You could have said that to your enslaver. Well, you should do unto others as you should do as they would do unto you. And he'd be like, boy, get your back in them cotton fields. We're not the same. Why are you making arguments from this silly old book under which you were enslaved? There are verses in that book that they use to explain your enslavement. You're not the same. They don't view you as the same. They view themselves as humans. They view you as chattel, which is to say property. So you are now using the same book that enslaved you to try to get equality or reparations? Fascinating.
Stealing from people and giving it to yourself is what you would do unto others.
No, I think
because
I think the white Americans stole free labor from black. Did white Americans steal free labor black folks?
No, they bought it. They bought it from other African Americans that sold it to us. So
no, it wasn't other
Africans that sold it to us.
Starting something new isn't just hard; it's terrifying. We're not just using stuff for Shopify and more DSA.
Through battles and everything. Africans,
on what basis?
Just remember this: Africans, through battles and everything else, captured other Africans and then sold them to the U.S. They were purchased,
right?
Not just stolen,
right? I don't disagree with that.
Now, there's a couple aspects of this that are very important. So number one, you'll notice that the white fellow is just moving around. You know, he's like a good boxer that's hit and move, stick and move. He's not being pinned down or cornered at all. And the black guy is not very good at cutting off the ring, so to speak. Furthermore, we are experiencing mission creep. We're debating religion now. Word. Why are we debating religion? Doesn't seem very relevant. And here's another piece. And religion's the most difficult thing to debate. But you're trying to justify reparations based on religion when, you need reparations because of slavery. But religion was used to justify slavery. So you're trying to pull the Uno reverse card? I don't know about you, buddy.
Okay. And we were brought over to the U.S.
There's a key distinction.
Can I just finish?
Go ahead.
I'll let you talk.
Oh, yeah. And notice this. I want you to notice one thing. And that was the first time that the black guy interrupted the white guy. And I do want to note that for purposes of fairness and objectivity. But I want you to notice this. When the black guy brings up religion and the origins of how the slaves made it to the enslaved Africans made it to the United States, the white guy says, no, we didn't steal them. We bought them. We bought them, meaning you black humans, we bought you, which only doubles down on the psychology of, I believe you are something, an object that can be purchased. Meaning you're not a human, you were an object. I still believe you to be an object that can be bought and sold. So no, we didn't steal you, we bought you. And you fundamentally have to believe that black humans are at a level objects to even try to double down on, no, we didn't steal you, we bought you. Because if you did believe that black humans are human, even if you exchanged money, you would not conceive of the idea that a human being could be trafficked or bought legitimately. So whether money was exchanged or not, you could not consider that a legitimate transaction, which means that by definition, they were stolen against their will, which is the facts. They didn't go into enslavement happily or willingly. We know that because there's evidence of blacks jumping aboard into the ocean. Knowing damn well they weren't going to survive, doing it out of fear, doing it out of rebellion. So they were in fact stolen, but the black guy's not sharp enough or man enough to argue against this wrong categorization. The white guy's doubling down on his white supremacist view that blacks are in fact chattel to be bought and sold. And if we paid a price, a dollar amount, then they were ours and we can do with them as we please. And because we bought them and did with them as we please, we owe nothing. We paid whatever it cost at that time. That was the end of the transaction. You will get nothing else for it because you're not human, because you're black. It's the argument that he made in so many words.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay. And
But
they were brought over to the
there's
U.S.
a key distinction.
Can I just finish?
Go ahead.
Man? I'll let you talk for a while.
Go ahead.
They were brought to the U.S. They didn't know any languages. They didn't know anything other.
Wait, who didn't know any languages? Are there any human beings who don't know any languages? I mean, that sounds ludicrous. It's not even realistic. But the black guy is apparently letting him ride with these claims.
Then they were tools. And I do agree with you. And I think it was
That was a complete lie. And again, this is my whole point, is that when you see the whites here, they'll wear a suit in some cases. They'll try to look the part, but these are the dumb ones. These are not the Benjamin Franklins. These are the descendants who have basically allowed what their forefathers built to crumble. When I go to Rome, for example, and I observe the Colosseum or the forums in Rome, it's breathtaking. But when I observe the Italians of today, I know that these were not the Romans of yesterday. The same thing is true here in the United States. This fellow is an imbecile. He just said that the Africans came over not knowing any languages. Well, we know for a fact that this is not true because the enslavers specifically made sure that they did not allow them to communicate in their mother tongues, languages, and they robbed them of language. And it was systematic and intentional. So the sources indicate that this fellow is lying. And he may be lying willfully, but I don't think he's that clever. I think he's just lying because of sheer ignorance. And the black fellow, again, is pretty much letting this skate by. Shout out to Portia supporting the work. Came in using PayPal now, so acknowledge Frank. He writes, tuition for the great lesson on communication and tactics. Peace of the Saints, Sass in Houston. Shout out to all the sections around the world. I hope you guys are staying militant and ready to go. Keeping all our guys trained to go. You dig? I also acknowledge Albatar supporting the work using the Stripe link in the description of the video. I appreciate you. Shout out to Mr. Talbert, who just became a member at school.com/Marquette, Marquett. And shout out to Joshua. I think he came in again supporting using the Stripe link. Shout out to Gary, came in also using the Stripe link. And shout out to Gabriel supporting via Stripe. Carrying on.
horrible that they did that. But it doesn't mean that they're 8 generations later, you deserve reparations because of what your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather went through. And
so again, he has these exaggerations by saying great 5 times. You don't actually have to go back that far because slavery was not that long ago. You don't need 5 greats, maybe 4, maybe 3. Do you know? We should ask you. And this is the problem that the black fellow has not interrogated the position of the white fellow, and the white fellow, or shall we say Bo, is not very knowledgeable. So it'd be really easy to pick him apart. And Austin should invest more time in that. But Austin came in with his prepared set of facts, and he's ready to give his facts, but he's not really ready to contend. He's not ready to engage in the bit of conflict that is core to debate and fundamental to domination in general.
I would even go back to biblical.
But you don't need to go back to biblical, because it is not a historical text that is well regarded across the planet Earth. It is a core text of white supremacy. And therefore, you might believe it, but we can take this as your religion. That would be as relevant as me saying, oh, well, let me reference the Quran. Well, if I'm a Muslim, then it only has validity to me. So would it make sense for me as a Muslim to reference that to you as a Christian? Or even if I was a Muslim and I was trying to be reasonable, I wouldn't reference a book that requires faith. I would reference a text made by scholars that are well regarded in their field.
Theories or the Bible, just the Bible. Let's go back to the Bible.
And again, you have people referencing the Bible who probably don't know the Bible very well. Shout out to Pete Hegseth.
Bible, Deuteronomy, Jeremiah,
You got to be kidding me.
Exodus, Ezekiel, all claim that in similar form, the son shall not bear the guilt of the father, nor the father bear the guilt of the son.
Right. That's not talking about government institutions. So when
we're not talking about government institutions.
Yeah, we
we're talking about
absolutely are.
Christianity.
But it actually doesn't matter if it was referring to government institutions, because the Bible doesn't matter in this discussion. Neither does the Quran or the Torah.
No, we absolutely are talking.
And neither does my auntie, Aunt Allie Mae. None of it's relevant.
About government institutions. My entire argument is based around the premise.
You brought up Christianity.
Right.
So let's stick with the Bible real quick.
No. This country was founded supposedly on biblical principles. Now, my question is, the government of the United States of America, the Chief Justice Tanner stated that a black man has no rights that he is a white man is bound to respect. That was one of the worst rulings in the Supreme Court history.
That's your opinion, that was one of the worst rulings. Maybe if you're a white person, that was one of the best rulings. You know, if you're a white person that has a government composed of white people for the purpose of supporting the interest of white people, maybe that was one of the best rulings. This is your subjective opinion, and it's a silly opinion. And this is precisely why I argued earlier that to reference the laws of the United States as though that's going to give you any more validity to your argument, I think is foolish. And again, this is the politician kind of personality that we too often get, the politician pastor type of personality that comes out from the blacks. Shout out to Kristen, comes in by PayPal. He writes, "Peace of saints, tithes and offerings for your testimonial, Pastor Burton. I appreciate you. You dig, and I can assure you, you're going to get more game and wisdom coming from this than any sermon that you sit on." Shout out to Mr. Gardner. He writes, "Peace of Saints tuition. Just finished a workout, so I came into the stream a little late. I still have to support the big homie, Sass in Carolina." Shout out to all the sections. And if you're not a member, you're missing out. You dig? Shout out to those who are really a part of this thing of ours. We invite you. peaceofthesaints.com.
Of this country.
I agree with
that. Then codify. And the difference, let me go back to what you said. You said that Africans sold other conquered Africans into slaves. There's a key.
Also remember that the only time the white fellow has referenced anything, it has been the Bible, which is not a legitimate reference in the context of a secular debate.
Distinction. They sold slaves that were conquered in war. They did not create a caste-based system.
I think this black fellow, and he's probably on the liberal side, I'm actually surprised that he calls them slaves as opposed to what I would reference are enslaved Africans. When you call them slaves, it would suggest linguistically that they were fit for being slaves. They were maybe born this way, or it's a natural state for them. But anyways, carrying on.
Based on a genetic factor of skin color. That's a key distinction.
No, they were not enslaved based on a genetic factor of skin color. I think there's a little bit more to it, but I can accept what you're saying.
That I'm not going to let you avoid that in this debate. So can you acknowledge that the Africans that sold conquered slaves were doing so under a different system?
So they've both been tricked, but I'd say the black fellow is more tricked here, because now when he's finally trying to pin the guy down, he's pinning Bo down on the idea that the institution of African enslavement versus white enslavement, that these were different in nature, and they are radically different. And there are scholars that speak to that. But that actually has nothing to do with reparations. It's irrelevant to reparations, in fact. It's irrelevant. So you're finally pressing him on something, but it's irrelevant to your core conversation.
However wrong it may be, there is a key difference between selling someone into slavery and then codifying, which is what white Americans did. They created a caste system based around a non-self-determinable.
And this is silliness. The black guy's now gone off the edge into irrelevance, as though slavery is better when the blacks are doing it. It's better with these or those rules. None of it has relevance to the argument on reparations. Shout out to World Gone Mad supporting the work using the super chat feature. May I also acknowledge Mrs. Jackie writes, supporting the excellence. I appreciate you. And peace to the saints to World Gone Mad. Forbidden Fruit of Life writes, whites sensationalize the narrative black Africans sold their own. Oh, they love this. This is the favorite argument of the white supremacists. But they refuse to mention the tactics that were used to coerce the transaction. Well, there are a lot of things that they fail to mention. But it's in making that argument that you know you're talking to a white supremacist, right? Because they're essentially, rather than saying, you know what, slavery was a bad deal. It's a bad thing. I don't condone it. I think it's bad in general, whether blacks are doing it, whites are doing it. However, the person came to the situation of being in servitude, it's bad. That's how you know you're dealing with like a reasonable human being, as opposed to a bloodthirsty, domineering, vicious kind of character. You know you're dealing with a white supremacist the moment they start trying to justify enslavement. That's how you know you're dealing with someone who is a bad person or a fool.
Genetic factor. That is what happened. The United States government then legally codified this shit to keep black people as tools to be used. This is why the civil rights movement was so successful, because all we were asking the United States to do was to treat us as what the white man was, which was human beings.
And I have a piece on that in the Black Codes. He's referring to the Black struggle for equality. And there's a lot that you have to understand about that. And of course, this is not taught very well. So that's in the Black Codes.
Is that not what happened?
And guess what happened? We decided that you should be treated as human beings. In fact, bloodshed happened all over the country. One of the bloodiest war this country has ever seen. They fought for your freedom.
Did they though? No, actually they didn't. And again, none of this has anything to do with reparations and the white guy's lying, but at least this is the first time that he's lied where he could make a legitimate argument for what he's saying. But let's use common sense. What's the likelihood that the masses of whites said we'd like to engage in a civil war which could potentially destroy our country so that the blacks can have freedom? Come on, stop it, please. It sounds utterly ludicrous. If that was the case, afterward, blacks wouldn't have went into Jim Crow immediately. If that was the case, they'd gotten the right to vote immediately after the Civil War, right? I mean, this is complete nonsense, and the data does not bear this out.
And it's not enough. You still demand that you want reparations and you want everything else 8 generations later.
And you'll notice the black guy still has not caught on to the fact that, well, let's reference some of the other groups that have gotten reparations and let's look at the metrics that were used to award it.
Because when you fought for our freedom, that's like getting.
And that's a weird part. You fought for our freedom. Nonsense. This is not the case. And how often does it occur that soldiers in a war know why they're actually going to war? Very rarely do they really know. Americans, they often say things that are quite comical. You know, we're fighting for freedom. Word. Always the case. It's a consistent lie, this particular abstraction. Imagine this white fellow said that the whites in the Civil War were fighting each other for the freedom of the blacks. Extraordinary. Now let's take this word freedom. Oh, it came back up. In Iraq, we're fighting for our freedom and democracy. Oh, really? Who was trying to take our freedom? I've only had my freedom abridged by the American government. Never once have the Muslims or the Iraqis or the Saudis limited my freedom in America. Or you see some other instance in which the Americans are being violent, the American government. We're fighting in Iran for the freedom of the Iranians. The freedom. You see how this keeps coming up? It's a ludicrous argument. It's a threadbare argument. And it's one that's easy to put to bed. But the black fellow has failed to do it.
That's like asking a father to get Father of the Year for showing up to his son's basketball game.
No,
you
it's
don't get
not.
credit.
It's nothing
you don't
like
get credit for doing what you're supposed to do. You should have.
See this thing that this black fellow is talking about. You don't get credit for things you're supposed to do. That's the "you owe me something" mentality. They don't owe you a thing. And even if they did, I don't think they're going to give it to you. And that's, again, why I'm against wasting time on reparations. In the Black Codes, I have a piece called, a lesson called Nature of the Blacks. And you have to understand your nature of the, and so that's nature of the Blacks today. And that must change. That absolutely must change. Because if the blacks continue to behave in the same way that they have for over 100 years, then they'll continue to get the same outcomes, which have not been good.
You should have never enslaved us based on skin color to begin with.
I agree with that.
So then what are we having a conversation about, Bo?
Well, clearly not, because you keep interrupting me every 2 seconds. So what I will say is bloodshed happened throughout this country in order to get your freedom.
No, sir.
Is that you aren't thankful at all for that?
What kind of freedom did we get, though? You see, when
you were no longer slaves,
right? But what did we get? Land grants? Did we get back any sort of record? When we weren't slaves, I'll give you that. Were white slave owners compensated by the United States federal government for the loss of property?
Well, written in the 13th Amendment, they weren't supposed to
answer that question, Bo.
I am, if you would give me an opportunity.
Okay, so that was the first time he tried to pin him down. So the black guy says, hey, answer the question, and the white guy responds aggressively, low impulse control. And instead of answering the question, like, I am, if you let me, just answer the question, please.
Opportunity to.
That requires a yes or no.
No, it doesn't.
White slave.
No, actually, that was a yes or no question for sure.
Owners compensated by the U.S. Oh, yes, it is.
Can we talk?
He said nothing is yes or no. Again, the low IQ. Clearly, there's just no other explanation. It's low IQ. Shout out to Sage, came in supporting the work by PayPal. Appreciate you. May also acknowledge Jay, who just became a member at peaceofthesaints.com. May we welcome him warmly within this thing of ours.
Talk about history.
That's what I'm having.
Dude, shut the fuck up.
Oh,
you can say you're pissed because you know what?
Low impulse control. White guy says, shut the F up. This was the first instance of cursing in the debate. It was a white guy. And so you see they violate the things they accuse the blacks of. So often projection is the key for them, and deception is a core trait. And these are the things that we talk about in the black codes. But you'll notice, whereas the whites, they'll say that you have low impulse control. And then if you were to react in sometimes just a human way, they'll say, oh, well, look, that's the example. That's what's going on, low impulse control. You see, the black guy just was cursed at, and he didn't call it out. He's just rolling with the punches. And at a level, the instinct to call it out is not there because a lack of self-regard and self-respect. So your instinct is not to feel like, who are you talking to? You see, like who you got to be talking to the moderator. Are you talking to me? No, please don't speak that way. The instinct is not there. And that's the kind of thing in Boston University is about the mentality of a boss. If you really view yourself as a boss, you're talking to someone else and they talk to you like that, it's something you must address. And in addressing it, you prevent it from reoccurring.
I'm not pissed. I'm annoyed that you.
He said, I'm not pissed. Well, maybe you're emotional. Maybe that's what we should call it. Should we call it emotional? And then the white fellow begins to repeat himself. He says, I'm not pissed. I'm. Well, it appears you are pissed because you're cursing at me during a debate. You're also repeating yourself. You seem like you're at a loss for words.
Slave owners compensated by the U.S. Oh, yes, it is.
Can we talk about history?
That's what I'm having.
Dude, shut the fuck up.
You can say you're pissed because you know what happened.
I'm not pissed. I'm annoyed that you won't let me talk.
Go ahead.
Under the 13th Amendment, it wasn't supposed to.
I'm not pissed. I'm annoyed. Interesting. That you won't let me talk. So it's not that I'm not controlling my emotions. It's you. You're the problem. It's you. Even though I'm cursing, you're the problem. You'll also notice that the moderator didn't get in at that point. I don't think it's particularly necessary, but you should track over the debate. And I've not seen the whole debate, so we'll both get to see if it's objective. And shout to Sean, like, bro, just kicking back, which is smart. Let the dough flow in. You dig? Don't lift a finger. but we'll track if the moderator does step in at any point. That could have been a time where the moderator stepped in. Like, excuse me, let's try to keep this respectful. So we'll keep on watching.
To be, but yes, they were. You wouldn't even let me get to the yes before you interrupted. So yes, landowners
Law
were
is a victim.
compensated. What's your point? Why do you deserve reparations? You're being a victim.
Not only were
you were never enslaved.
Not only were they
you were
compensated.
never enslaved. I was never a slave owner. You don't deserve reparations. You haven't even discussed that there were black slave owners that enslaved black people.
There were?
Yes. I think there.
So you were never a slave, you were never enslaved, I was never a slave owner. That's actually not necessarily critical to the argument. That could have been another point that the black fellow jumped on. Bevy addresses some other person named Marquette, who spells his name with an E, writes, notice how black guy can't keep eye contact with white guy. I have noticed that, no doubt. I don't know if he's looking at notes or if it's just his nature. He writes, he's periodically looking downward. He's weak, peace of the saints. It would appear that way. I have to agree with you there.
There was anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 black slave owners.
It was 4,000.
Like I said, 3,000 to 4,000.
Right.
And what about only 25% of the Confederate South owned slaves?
That doesn't matter, actually. What's the relevance of that? You say it was 10%, say it was 90%. What is the relevance? You see, this fellow is spouting out some things here and there, but they're no relevance. And mind you, this is the second and third time that he's made references. The first reference wasn't legitimate, for it was a reference to the Bible as a source, which the Bible is not a source unless you're debating religion itself. Now he's referencing, 4,000 blacks were slave owners. Well, what's the meaning of it? What does that have to do with anything? It's irrelevant. And if you did want to make it relevant, it probably wouldn't be wise to state that as a discrete figure, but probably as a percentage. Because if 4,000 black slave owners was meaningful, you might say, well, did you know that 4,000 black slave owners enslaved black people in America? And that's worth noting because that's 60% of the slaveholders were black. 60%. Did you know that? That would be meaningful. But in reality, maybe it's probably like, less than 1%? And then it sounds a lot less relevant, especially because he can't connect it logically to the argument about reparations. Whether the enslaver was black, white, yellow, blue, or brown, that doesn't mean that the victim of enslavement doesn't necessarily deserve reparations because the person who enslaved them was the same race. That's not the argument that the gentleman has been making. He hasn't said we deserve reparations because we're black. We deserve reparations because we were enslaved and not paid for labor, and the ramifications of enslavement have lasted till today. He didn't say that we deserve reparations because the enslaver was white. No, it was because we were enslaved. And the reparations are not coming from white people. The reparations are coming from the United States government. And these are important clarifications to make, and the black fellow has wholly failed to do so. Shout out to Ernest supporting the work using the Stripe link. Shout out to Amir, comes in via PayPal. He writes, good evening, Mr. Burton. Thank you for your valuable time. I always appreciate the opportunity to learn from you. Peace be upon you. I appreciate you. Wa alaikum assalam. And thank you to all of the folks who are kind enough to have hit the like button and as well who show up and give true thanks.
So you think that all white people should be reimbursing you
Never
8 generations later?
No, I don't. Again, you keep making this about. See, the white fragile male ego is real interesting because you keep making this about white people. What I'm looking at is the government institution.
Yeah, so that would be a straw man because this is correct. This black fellow who's not terribly black, he's not the blackest black guy I've seen. He's not suggested that whites need to reach into their pockets and pay out reparations to the black people. He's not said that at any level. So that was a mischaracterization of his position. And I, in fact, don't think that was done strategically or intentionally because I don't think the white guy is clever enough to do that consciously. I think the white guy is just so emotional that he's misinterpreting the guy's arguments and also misrepresenting them out of anger and frustration.
I didn't mention white people once outside of looking at who was committing the act. The United States federal government codified a legal caste system based around color. Now, it just so happens that the ones that were occupying those seats happened.
No, it wasn't around color. It was around racial categorization. That's the most accurate way to state that. Shout out to Melvin. He writes via PayPal, tuition, like up, everyone. Likes are free. I agree. And that's an easy way to show your thanks. I always tell people, if you're still watching by now, you probably are liking what you're seeing. So hit the like button. And also, it's an easy way to do something that supports the stream. It costs you nothing. It's very easy for you to do, and it has benefit. It's an easy way to be generous and give a simple gift.
To be Caucasians from the mountains of Caucasus. Your inability to acknowledge the fact that when this happened from one generation, compounded across 200 plus years, if you're going to say and sit across me and say that if you repetitively restrict someone's economic ability to move, that it doesn't have a net negative lasting impact that can impact generations.
You've had the economic ability to move for the last 100 years almost.
He's interrupted the black guy.
Guess who's outperformed you?
Black guy did
Asians,
not call him
Hispanics,
out.
Indians, people from the Middle East have outperformed you over and over again.
Why is that?
And when he says outperformed you, it's like along what measure? Outperformed at what? We need to be specific. Outperformed in basketball? No, I'd say the black Americans have probably outperformed everybody in basketball, in singing, rapping, and dancing, and music, and entertainment, and cultural impact. Yeah, outperformed at what? What do you mean? And if you say outperformed financially or in terms of real estate acquisition or educational attainment, then we would say, okay, well, let's look at the reasons. Educational attainment, let's take that one. Well, if you look at the last 100 years, for example, you can find specific situations in which Black Americans were relegated to schools that were under-resourced, however you'd like to measure under-resourced. And then you would compare that to, say, the Chinese immigrants who came in. Were they legally required to go to under-resourced schools? Okay, there's one argument defeated, but let's add to that. In addition to that, you're comparing the Black masses. So you're looking at the totality of the Black American population, which would be our lower classes, our middle classes, and our upper classes. And you're comparing that to not all of the Chinese people, but to just the Chinese who immigrated, which is to say the Chinese who are more ambitious, probably upper class, because they can afford a ticket across the sea with their family. So you're comparing all of the Black classes to just the Chinese upper class or middle class. That's not apples to apples, which is to say it's not a fair comparison. So you're being illogical. And these are easy arguments to pick apart. And frankly, this fellow is repeating things that he's heard other white supremacists say, and there's no citation. So you would have not even gotten a chance to debunk his arguments, because the first time you say, well, as measured by what, he would have fallen apart straight away. And if he didn't fall apart and he was able to give facts and figures, which I know he could marshal, then you would break it apart by, well, yes, you're not comparing apples to apples. Here's how. Easy work. Just really easy work. I could do this stuff in my sleep.
Why is that, Bo?
Probably because they came here and they're not victimizing their slavery,
or maybe because
and holding it over every.
That's so strange, not victimizing their slavery. Well, the Blacks of today were not slaves, but if there are inheritances, and we can agree there is an inheritance from all things, good or bad, I'd say enslavement probably would leave some of the lingering things that would be from the victim side as opposed to the victimizer side. They'd be things coming from the loser side as opposed to the winner side. And so are we going to lie about that? We should lie about that. It's just blatant. Shout out to Frank supporting the work. Appreciate you. Carrying on.
Somebody's head. Well, maybe it's because they stood on their boots and they made a life for themselves.
And they were also able to label themselves as immigrants to receive assistance from the United States federal government off the backs of the work that Black people have been doing to gain their own equivalent.
And you guys have too these last 15 years with DEI and everything else that they've rolled out.
And then that's another falsehood. He's talking about DEI. I'd even like to go before it was called DEI. Let's talk about affirmative action. And there's many well-recognized writers on the topic, including Thomas Sowell. We talk about DEI. We can't help but mention the white woman, which is not a Black person or even a person of color. And we'd have to acknowledge that a DEI has not been a racial policy shaped around helping Black people. It's helped a lot of white women. And let's figure out also, has DEI helped white people? Well, what is DEI? DEI is the idea that we're not operating on a fair playing field. Well, were we ever operating on a fair playing field if white people had primitive accumulation? If Black people came from a recent history of being denied education and their net worth was very low, coming fresh out of slavery and being denied 40 acres and a mule, which was promised and never delivered on. So did they start at an equal playing field? So was it ever fair? So you're saying if you remove DEI, were the black and the white starting off at the same level so that they could compete in a meritocratic system? No, not at all. So your claims are utterly ludicrous. And the arguments, again, are just pathetically simple-minded. This is Charlie Kirk level intellectualism, which means no intellectualism at all. Just pretend, the kind of stuff that impresses sophomoric, pimple-faced undergrads.
How are they going to sit here and repeat that? 15 years versus 250. How insane can you be?
Why are you yelling? Why are you so upset?
Aha. And there it is right there. I told you guys earlier. So the white guy was the first guy to interrupt. He was the first guy to call names. And he was the first guy to curse. And the black guy never pointed it out. Now the black guy, well into the debate, curses one time, and he wasn't cursing directly at the guy. He didn't call him a name. Actually, I think he did. Let me listen to it. But the white guy called him out. You see the difference? Black guy took the abuse, didn't call it out. White guy says, oh, absolutely not, and called it out. This is an important difference that is consistent and predictable across the racial categories, unless you get my black code and you figure out what is out there and also what's in here and what's in here, and you figure out how to operate.
Yeah.
250. How insane?
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. He said 250. And the white guy immediately calls him out for cursing.
Insane can you be?
Why are you yelling? Why are you?
And then he says, why are you yelling? He's not yelling. Certainly cursing, which I think is probably not a good thing to do.
So upset right now.
For the same reason you wanted me to shut the fuck up, because I'm not upset. I'm just
right. Exactly. So he said 200 and something effing years, which is not a direct curse at the other person. Whereas the white guy said, shut the F up, which is very direct and very rude and vulgar. And for some reason, the white guy finds what the black guy said to be very offensive, but the black guy just let it go. Well, maybe the blacks can learn something. Maybe you shouldn't be letting it go.
You are upset
to a standard that you want to run from.
No, I've asked you multiple times why you deserve reparations. You haven't been able to tell me. You basically said.
Now this is badgering. He said, I asked you and you haven't been able to tell me. No, actually, he told you immediately when the debate started and then told you 3 more times. And I think he actually was quite articulate in the way he explained it. You've not accepted the answer. You're badgering at this point, which may be a strategy, or it may just be how thick you are, like how you're just so deluded. Shout out to 8141 writes, not new to your channel, but also not a member. I just sit back and listen and absorb the message. I love that you say what you mean and mean what you say. I really do. And I appreciate it. I don't know if this is looks like it's maybe a young lady. Who knows? A lot of people use other folks' photos. I appreciate you. Thank you for supporting. Carrying on.
That because you are the 8th generation removed from slavery, you deserve it. And I got a question for you. Your middle name's Julio. Are you both your parents black?
They're both black.
Both are black. Are they both descendants of slaves?
Hey, shout out to the white guy, because I'm on board with him right there. What he said, your middle name's Julio. Nigga, are you really a real nigga? That was a great question. And it was also funny. And it was meaningful and necessary. I think that was the smartest point that the white guy has made the entire time. So far, the black fellows had superior argumentative ability. The white guys had superior argumentative tactics. The black guys had superior facts and figures. And the white guy has had superior ring generalship. He's controlled the dynamic.
They are.
So in your what happens with reparations if you have one white parent and one black parent? Do they get less?
And that's a great question. Absolutely. That's a very good question. And I would probably respond and say, well, what happens when you're Jewish and you're getting reparations today? And how do we know if you're Jewish? If your name is Milikovsky and you changed your name to sound more Jewish, but you actually come from Europe, which is not where Jews come from. What is Jewish if everybody's Jewish? The Indians are Jewish, the Ethiopians are Jewish, the Moroccans are Jewish, the Europeans are Jewish. What is that? So, who should get reparations and who shouldn't? And how do we know if you actually are Jewish? How do they determine it? Oh, they take your word for it. Well, I guess you can just take our word.
How does reparations even work in a system where there's...
the white slave
can I just finish, bro? How does reparations even work in a society where just the government?
And you'll notice the white guy 2 times. He said, "Can I just finish? Don't interrupt me. Stop interrupting." He said that twice. Whereas conversely, we did not hear at any point the black guy object to being interrupted.
Written with fraud right now. I am talking about how reparations doesn't work today. If it had happened back then, more than happy for it, but it doesn't work today. And let's have that conversation rather than go back 8 generations and continue to complain about slavery.
Well, I already told you my reparations plan wouldn't be the $250,000. Obviously, you must have skipped that part. So what my reparations plan would look like would be offering homeownership assistance, offering business lines of credit, and actually looking at creating a reparations task force to analyze the current net negative economic impact.
But they're already doing business lines of credit. For example, in LA.
No, this is very interesting. And it seems though the white guy has positioned himself to be on the verge of saying something insightful. But based on his history, I'm very doubtful that he's about to achieve that. But I'm open to hear it. So let's hear what he has to say and if it actually pertains to foundational Black Americans. May I acknowledge, Ronnie writes, "Peace of the Saints, tuition for the starting of my allegiance to the good people." Oh, absolutely. And peace to the saints indeed. When I say peace to the saints, I'm talking about the good peoples of the earth of every color, creed, race, and religion.
Hey, if you're a small business owner, you get the ability to get small business loans over white Americans.
Based on what data metric?
Yeah, it's like, is that true? Like, please explain.
What source do you have for that?
And mind you, I've run many small businesses, like 23 of them, literally like 23 separate small businesses. I've to this day got no advantage with the United States government to this day, not one time ever at all. And even when COVID hit, I didn't take $1 from the government, not $1.
I could talk to, there was a woman that came.
There was a woman. No, we asked you for sources and data.
Came into my bar that literally told me this. She's with the.
Oh God. And this again, it's like these whites are not the intelligent, they're not their intelligent forefathers. These are mentally challenged whites who think that they are the superior whites of centuries past. His data is a woman came into my bar, which lets us know that he is a DEI hire. If he did not come from an established white family, he wouldn't have a bar because he's not very intelligent. He wouldn't have a bar. He'd be completely suffering. And this is the delusion that the white collective experiences. It's kind of like women, you know, some of them use pretty privilege and they get certain favors and they think that they earned it. Whereas this fellow started off farther ahead and he thinks that he earned the lead. And that's what we're dealing with. This is what you would call a dumb white man. And it's just unfortunate to see.
The SBA loan offices in downtown Los Angeles.
So once again, let me restate this. Median white household wealth is approximately 60.
Before you state that, you should have pointed out that what he said was not data. It was not evidence. It was hearsay. It was gossip. It was probably a made up story.
To 10 times that of Black households, and that varies by the data set. Median white household wealth is approximately 6 to 10 times that of Black households, and that varies by the data set or the year. Home ownership gap remains at 30 percentage points between white Americans and Black Americans.
So he's establishing that there are significant disparities in wealth. That's correct. I don't think that's particularly meaningful. And also, I think that's something we could all just agree on without the data, but fair enough to have it. Shout out to Civilized Barbarian, comes in by Venmo. He writes, "The host of this debate is incredibly useless." Well, think about it. Remember, this is business. Is he useless? I mean, to whom? To you? To the audience? People still watch the debate. And most importantly, remember this, most importantly, and these are the kind of ideas I talk about in Boston University and the Book of Dark Truths. So you stated that the host is completely useless. What is the host's goal with this debate? To make money. Is the host making money? Yes. You called him useless, meaning that he's not working, he's not doing things. He's operating like a boss. Hands off, hands free. He can be at leisure. Let the workers work. Let the workers earn the money. Your goal as a boss is to be what you would call useless so that you can go on vacation or you could go on holiday. If I were him, I'd be trying to figure out how I can be more of what you call useless, which is to say, I'm sitting here, I'm not doing anything. What if next time, instead of me even sitting here, I'm out at the movies with my old lady, or I'm out playing with my kids at the park. I don't have any kids, but I'm out playing with my kids at the park or doing whatever I'd like to do. And these people are in my studio using my equipment on my YouTube channel with me monetizing it. And they're going at each other's heads. And I'm making money while they do it, while they do the work. And I'm useless. Yes, I'll let someone in the audience call me useless because I'm raking in the money. And remember, my goal was the money, not to be useful. My goal is not to be useful. I want these fools to be useful. My goal was not to work hard. My goal was to make money hard, if you like. Cold, hard cash, we say. Come on. And I hope you really took what I said to heart, civilized barbarian. And you need the Book of Dark Truths or Boston University, one or the other, probably both at some point, because the truth of the matter is that that's ideal. You'd be a fool to want to break your back to earn a buck. You should be trying to figure out, how can you look useless while raking in a bunch of money? I'd much rather, if I could have somebody else come do this for me, and I can sleep or I can exercise or, get a massage from my old lady, romance her, tell her how beautiful she is, and let somebody else work and earn the money for me. I thought that was the goal. So do not have a peon mentality. Don't have a worker mentality. Have a boss mentality. Boss University. Learn from the bosses. Learn to become a boss. Learn to think like a boss. And I also want you guys to soak this in. There's a whole morality that is associated with your class. There's a morality associated with the master class. There's a morality associated with the impoverished class. And one class is strong, the other class is weak. And the strong class actually has a morality that they have intentionally defined. They define what's good, what's bad, what they like, what they don't like, because they have power. Conversely, the peons, the working class, the lumpen class, this class of people, they have not actually defined their morality. Their morality is in reaction to their material environment and their circumstances, and it's in reaction to what the big guys are doing and saying. I'll give you an example. In the powerful group, you say, I value having a car with a driver, so I don't have to drive. I can hang out in the back. I value having a car at all of my different properties. That's the way to live. And you say it is morally better to have that. More options, the better. More material possessions, the better. I have more stuff. I can do more stuff. That's what you decided on. And you could choose to have a lot, or you could choose to have a little. You have the option, and you actively picked to have more. Conversely, at the bottom, the lumpen class, the proletariat, the poor class, and we're engaging Marx and Nietzsche here, the inversion of morals, beyond good and evil. The lumpen class, the proletariat, the impoverished folks, the powerless people, check this out, they don't have the option to have multiple cars or to have a driver or to have multiple homes. They don't have the option. They only have the option to have a single home or a single car, if any. So their morality reacts to that. They don't choose it, they react, and they say it is moral to have one car, it is moral to have one home, it is moral not to have a driver. And then they create an explanation to justify it. So it goes like this. You can only live in one house at a time. Why do I need multiple houses? You could only live in one at a time. Why do I need multiple cars? That's just a waste. You can only drive one car at a time. Why do you need to pollute with multiple cars? Why do I need a driver? I like to drive. I can drive myself. And they act as though they believe in this, or it's a moral decision that they made, when in actual fact, it's a reaction to their material circumstances, and it represents their options. You see, because here's the kicker. If you took 100 poor people and you said, would you like a Rolls Royce? Oh, no, that's too expensive. If I had $1 million, I wouldn't get a Rolls Royce. Why would you pay that much for a car? And then you bless them with $10 million. I promise you some of them are going to get a Rolls Royce. I promise you. All of a sudden, their morals are going to change. And this is what happens when people say, oh, you got money and you changed. Well, the truth is, when you were poor, you were not fully expressed. You were not self-realized because you lacked materially. You lacked options. So you created a false consciousness that justified your existing options. It made you feel okay about not being able to get what you want, made you feel okay about lacking control in your environment. I hope I didn't get too deep on you. I hope you did. Were you guys with me on that? Were you with me on that? I'm going to wait till you talk about it in the chat. I need to know if you were with me on that. That was high level stuff. You'd have to take a philosophy course at an Ivy League to actually understand that. You'd have to take, high level upper division politics and philosophy to understand what I just explained to you. Let me know if you were able to catch on to that. I noticed we lost about 8% of the viewers when I went into that, but I just need to know if you comprehended what I just broke down. Come on now. So what I'm telling you is that people lie without knowing they're lying. When you hear a poor person say, I wouldn't spend $1 million on a Bugatti, it's because they can't spend $1 million on a Bugatti. So they create an explanation that makes their psyche feel good about the fact that they cannot do it, and they don't expect to ever be able to do it. And you might say, well, Marquette, would you ever speak against spending millions of dollars on a Bugatti? No. Well, why is that, Marquette? Because I can get enough money to buy a Bugatti. So I'm not going to condemn it because I might end up doing it one day. Whereas another person knows they'll never have a chance at making hundreds of millions of dollars. So they're going to condemn it, 6 ways to Sunday. Come on now. Come on now. Yeah, we cooking. High level stuff here. If you haven't sent in tuition, send it in now, because most of you will never be in an academic environment that will give you those kinds of ideas. You absolutely will not be. And I wouldn't even be surprised if today, formerly prestigious universities don't teach at that level.
This is directly due to redlining policies that I hate to give her credit, but Jasmine Crockett brought this up. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has brought this up. There are still economic vestiges of racist originated policies or racially originated policies that exclude Black people from home.
Look at this. Look at this. This is my whole point right here. Right. So, wow, that's a fascinating perspective, but I still wouldn't buy a Rolls Royce. Then I'd have to ask you first, have you ever been in first question one, do you have Rolls Royce money? Do you have Rolls Royce money? Not could you get one, but could you afford one? That's a different thing. See, it's a different thing. One, do you have Rolls Royce money? And then number two, have you ever been in a Rolls Royce? And then if both of those answers are yes and yes, and then your answer is still, I would not get one, then I can accept it as honest and accurate. But until then, you don't even know if you're lying. You don't know if that's actually the truth. You don't know if you're lying because you do not have the psychological freedom to make that decision. Like, for example, if someone said, hey, Marquette, this $2 million house right here, would you live in it? Would you buy it? Or this $5 million house, would you live in it? Would you buy it? Or this $20 million house, would you live in it? Would you buy it? And I said, no, I wouldn't. Well, I could actually just buy it. So, when I'm saying no, I'm saying it in the truth based on what's actually realistic and possible. So I can think about it clearly. I don't have to consider the fact that it's not possible. You see what I'm saying? So my mind is actually free to consider the question. Yours is not, in all likelihood. And that's an important thing to be aware of, to be self-aware of. And most people will never be. Carrying on.
Ownership.
They also excluded immigrants as well. You act like other people did not go through this.
What I'm saying is that,
but no. Why were they able to do better and you guys weren't?
Once again,
again, home ownership is up amongst white Americans because we're the majority.
Well, then that would mean that that's not really a valid data point, because when you look at per capita home ownership.
So this is per capita which you're repeating.
No, what I'm looking at is nationally.
And, I was just looking through the chat to see who actually comprehended what I said. I don't think it was a majority of people, and that's okay. Shout out to Brielle writes, the thing not mentioned in the chat is the reinforcement of the argument that lower classes lack integrity. And that's true. And partly it's not their fault. It's the human wiring. And at some level, it is their fault. And you know what? It's easier to be moral when you have money. It's way easier, which is to say that it's easier to not steal when you have money. It's harder to not steal when you're hungry or when you don't have money. So there is no doubt that it's much more likely that people can exercise morality when they're wealthy. I didn't say that they are more moral. I said they can exercise morality when they are wealthy. I hope you guys get the difference, because there is certainly a difference.
But you're saying
so nationally, if we have 60% of the population, we would have more home ownership.
Right.
So you should be pulling from a per capita and not a nationally poll, right?
The reason I'm pulling from a national poll is because who controlled this nation for a longer period of time, white or black Americans?
I would say white Americans, yes.
Okay, so if white Americans controlled this country for a longer period of time, it would stand to reason that they could enact policies that could enable them to maintain their economic stronghold while systematically subjugating the economic ability to move for black Americans. Again, black people are the only race in this country, the only class of people in this country that were deliberately stigmatized based on color. Did that or did that not happen?
That's not true.
Who else in this country was stigmatized purely based on color?
You don't think other people don't experience racism?
You're not answering my question.
No, I am. I'm asking you a question.
Now you're the one yelling.
No, it's because you're talking over me.
Not really.
Yeah.
Bro. I do have the approval rates on the SBA stuff if you guys want it.
Yeah.
Black applicants, 35% approval rate. White applicants, 64% approval rate on SBA loans.
Is this Los Angeles?
And this completely shatters the arguments of the white fellow. And it's not surprising, because the white fellow, again, is not well researched. He's all emotion, and that's consistent. Every time I talk or debate a white supremacist, they always come unprepared, no facts, but overconfident, underprepared, overconfident. And even their heroes represent the same. Charlie Kirk, I can't tell you how many times I listened to him speak and I thought, this guy's an imbecile, but he's so followed. And it only represents the fact that there's been a decline in IQ, and this is documented.
This is national.
Read that one more time.
Can you do Los Angeles?
Yeah.
No. Go national first.
He read it. We don't need to hear it again.
So 64% versus 30.
And then the white guy got mad. Oh, he read it. We don't need to hear it again, which is to say, I'm mad. I don't want to hear the truth that I'm wrong again. One time was enough.
35. So more than
can you do me a favor? Can you narrow that down to the last 10 years, or can you narrow it down to like
for
the last
LA
year
or for national?
For LA.
Okay.
Mind you want to narrow it down to the last 10 years because it makes your argument look slightly better when I'm looking at the national.
It's because you're okay with
data.
Racial discrimination as long as
Yes, you get it. He says people will convince and lie to themselves that money doesn't matter and that they're above it when they don't have it. So true. And when you have the good fortune of having experience and having some sense of sophistication, you can interpret the world better. And at some level, it's isolating. And at another level, it's comical. For example, there's a nice young lady, and I've heard this from many women. They'll say things like, oh, money doesn't matter to me. If I live in a modest apartment or I drive a regular car, I don't care. Let them spend just a couple weeks. Let them spend a couple weeks. If you drive a great car and a chick, before she knows what car you drive or what your lifestyle is like, let her spend a couple weeks with you in a car that is remarkable, whatever kind of car it is, but it just is remarkable. You get in there and you start driving and people are like giving you the thumbs up. They're pumping their fists when they see you, the 16-wheelers hitting the horn and like, yeah, people are complimenting you on the car. People are walking by in awe and amazement. You go to the gas station and people walk up to have a conversation, people of all races, colors, and creeds and ages. And she starts to feel a little different. And she can, for the first time, feel the power of wealth displayed when people know you got it. You see, when people, there's some things that just like people like, that's a Rolls Royce. That's $300,000 on wheels. Like, I know he has it. And that's pretty cool. Like, hey man, can I see inside your car? And they see how people gravitate to that. I promise you, out of her mouth, she might be saying, oh, I could drive this Toyota, this Honda, this Kia Rio till I die. It doesn't really matter. But I promise you, irrespective of what she said, that Rolls Royce, that G-Wagon, whatever that car was, and G-Wagons really ain't hitting like that, to be honest with you. Whatever that car was, that Lamborghini, I promise you, it is going to wear her down. It's going to wear her psyche down because she hadn't experienced it before. So she couldn't estimate the different way that she would feel as a human being. You see, she couldn't estimate it because she never experienced it. She had no sense of what it's like. But now that it's accessible, she's like, you know what? I kind of like that feeling. I kind of like the feeling of when we pull up somewhere and the doors open, people are kind of looking like, who's that? And they're kind of looking at you in awe, like, who is this person? What do they do for a living? Who are they? Are they famous? Are they someone important? Are they on TV? Like, who are you? What do you do? You're going to like that feeling. And not only are you going to like it, you're going to want it again, and you're going to want more of it. And it's going to fundamentally change your expectations and your desires about your experience in society. So 100%. And that's the thing is, as the gentleman said, people will convince themselves and lie to themselves. Now, the key, ladies and saints, because some of you who are watching, you guys might be taking my AI course, you might take Boston University, you might take the Master Communicator course, and you're going to see yourself raise up. And we've had so many students who have just, pew. And what I want for you guys is for you to appreciate all of the things that come with success and maintain your feet on the ground and maintain the gritty mentality of, I could lose all of this and I'll still be me. My 3-sentence Bible: be yourself, be good to yourself, be good to good people. Number one, be yourself. I am not a Lamborghini. I am not a mansion. I am not a fill in the blank. I am a human being. I'm a man. And I will be a man regardless of living in a mansion or having a Lamborghini or having a bunch of property. I'm a man. And if you can hold on to that and hold on to the fact that the inside of you is developed, that's why I always encourage education, because they can take your mansion, they can take your Lamborghini, they can take your fancy clothes. They cannot take what you know and what you can do. They cannot take the man that you are. So if you can get the Lamborghini, but still be a man and not turn into a woman and not turn into a greedy person, not turn into an arrogant person, you have mastered this existence. And it'll be a continuous challenge, but that's what I encourage. That 3-sentence Bible will keep you safe, I promise you.
Having against you.
No, I'm not. I never said I was okay with racial
Well, then why are you sitting here refuting my argument? Why can't we get down to the bottom to
I
it?
said we can. But
Okay.
That was so bizarre. He said, why are you sitting here refuting my argument? Because we're debating. What do you mean? Why are you refuting my argument? This guy is not the brightest star in the sky.
Let's get down to the bottom. Do you admit that DEI policies have advantages towards Black and minority groups?
Black people only made up 3% of DEI hires.
That's actually wrong. So I looked that up.
Okay, sure.
Black Americans only made 3% of DEI hires within the DEI framework.
Which is what I was talking
No. What I'm saying is DEI, Black Americans only made 3% of DEI hires in diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. They made up more hires when they were actually implemented into business practices and governments.
Based on what data source?
Let's use the Fortune 500 only hired 6% of white applicants in 2021, with 60% of the nation being white applicants. That doesn't make sense. That obviously gave an advantage.
Advantage. See, this is what I'm telling you. These are not the smart whites. Bro said advantage. This man is creating words like Jesse Jackson. Shout out to Wayne. He writes, I know my level. I know enough to know that I don't know it all. Your breakdowns are buildups. Peace of saints. I appreciate you. And that was beautifully stated. And we all have so many things that we don't know. And I would hope that if there's a level above you, you want to get to it. And I'll tell you guys a funny story. Actually, not a story, but I'll give you a funny fact. Sometimes there are so many levels above you that you don't know they exist. Like there are levels above you don't even know the level is there until you get to the next level, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know about that. That's crazy. There's so many things. But the funny thing about human existence is that we're all doing the same thing. It's just at different levels, right? We're doing the same stuff at different levels, right? There's some people that go to the airport, they catch a Spirit flight, and then they fly to wherever they're going to, and they can't recline their seat. And that's the experience. They don't think twice about it. Then there's some people that go to the airport and then they go to the Amex lounge and they have a full meal before they get on the airplane, and they get in first class or business class. And if it's international, the seat reclines into a bed and is very comfortable, and they get great service, and they arrive at where they're at and they're like, oh, wow, I feel like somebody. Then there's other people who don't go to the airport. They go to the Clearport, the private airport, and they're treated first class, and they hop on a private jet, whether it's one they own or one that they purchased the flight, and they spend $100K and they fly overseas with just them and their immediate family or their friends or their chick that they're dealing with. And they have a stewardess or two that's specifically attuned to what they want and need. And they're flying there in luxury and opulence. And then they arrive, and the experience is radically different because they don't have to go through TSA or even sometimes customs, and they have a level of freedom that other people don't know exists. Average people do not know that while you're being searched in TSA and treated like a would-be criminal, there are other people that are going through flying private, and they're flying with cocaine, guns, ammunition, contraband, everything illegal. And nobody knows and nobody cares. And your experience here on earth is radically different. And while you're being groped by TSA agents who only have a high school degree, you don't realize that there are people who are committing real crimes that are going through with contraband and everything that you shouldn't have, but they're flying private and there is no TSA. You just get on board and fly to where you want to be and enjoy luxury. It's different.
To Black Americans and minorities.
This is why we need fact checks, because every objective.
Look it up. You can look it up on your phone.
Every.
Now the comedy is that, and I agree with him, you do need fact checkers at some level. But the white guy who is just recently disproven 2 separate times, one of which was by the moderator, proven to be a liar. And this is ironic because he's provided very few references, and the few that he has provided have been disproven. He says you can look it up. Do you want me to look it up?
Measurable statistical data point that we have as of 2025 indicates that Black Americans, male or female, made up 3% of all DEI hires across this country. What you're saying
that's not true.
So he's interrupted. Black guy's probably not going to call him out for interrupting. And also, is he going to reference a study that contradicts that?
Because so where are you getting that from?
So what percentage of Black hires were DEI you want me to look up?
What you can look up for what year did you just use? What year did you use? You said
no. So let's go back to what you had just said. You said
notice the white man's tactics. Black guy says, what year did you just use? He wanted to challenge his data. White guy says no, and then puts it back on the black guy. Let's see if the black guy takes it.
Black Americans only made up 3% of all DEI hires.
Right.
I'll look that up.
But it's actually 3% of DEI within the DEI framework. So people that had, for example, a DEI program in their business, only 3% of Black Americans were hired for those programs.
And while we're at it, remind me what DEI exists for to begin with. Why does DEI exist to begin with?
Honestly, it's a racial component to try to disadvantage the white people and give advantages to my.
That was crazy. He says it is designed to disadvantage white people. That could be a byproduct. I frankly don't think it is, but it could be a byproduct, and you'd have to describe it as such. But he described it as the actual purpose of the program, which is very disingenuous.
Minorities
to disadvantage white people when they've had an advantage in this country for how many years?
So it's okay to disadvantage a group.
No,
that's what you're saying.
So what that is
actually what you're saying is okay.
And this goes back to the piece about, when you've experienced privilege or advantage for so long, the removal of privilege feels like a disadvantage. And that's what this gentleman is struggling with.
Disadvantage a group because they've had the advantage for so many years.
That's
which would be better if we gave everybody opportunity.
hold on.
Yeah, you're confused. I get it.
I'm not confused at all. I'm
Yeah,
actually going to.
you
Now you have the white guy who's of inferior intellect saying that the black guy is confused, which is suggesting that the black guy is struggling to comprehend. And I think we can all assess that probably between the two of them, the black guy's for sure better prepared and sharper, but still the white guy would like to question the intellect of the black fellow. And this is not a new thing. This is a strategy, whether it's a actual belief or just a projection or a tactic to put the black guy down and to dominate him. Shout out to Emmanuel supporting the work using the Stripe link. I appreciate you. I also acknowledge Mr. Miller, who just got Boston University. I promise you're going to absolutely love it. It was my first full-length course that I created for the YouTube community, and it's just so foundational. Do let me know what you think. You're really going to enjoy it. May I acknowledge Wayne? He comes in via PayPal. He writes, more tuition for the breakdown. Keep cooking, Marquette. P.S. People, his name is spelled correctly below. There is no E at the end. Indeed, and the ability to follow directions or the ability to observe details or listen is going to get you far in life. There's some people that I deal with, and it's their inability to listen. It's not that they're not intelligent. It's their inability to observe details or to listen, their inability to do those things that makes them lose an opportunity. Sometimes you'll find that you can outperform people who are more intelligent because you're using your brain. Not because your brain is better than theirs. Theirs might be better. But as I said, it's not about how intelligent you are. It's about how often you are intelligent, meaning are you using your brain? If you misspell my name and my name is written below, that's not because you're dumb. That's because you're careless. And being dumb, it is what it is. If you have low IQ, it is what it is. It's pretty much fixed. But being careless is a choice. And you should never choose to be careless. And that's why I always say, the saints, we are meticulous, we are militant, and this goes for the men and the women. We represent ourselves well, we represent our culture well. Shout out to Sean, and shout out to Sean. I had the good pleasure of meeting Sean. Brother has some beautiful drip, some great style. He writes peace and some great boxing skills too. Real tough guy. Just a lot of grit. He writes, peace to the saints. I consistently find these nerdy white males complaining and blaming black/immigrants for their incompetence. 100%. It's funny because you have ICE and the incompetent whites, and there are many competent whites, right? I mean, this country wouldn't exist as it is if there was no such thing as competent whites. There are a lot less as a percentage now, but about a fourth of America's physicians are foreign born. So at the point in which you start trying to remove all of the immigrants or limit them from coming in, you're hurting yourself, you see. And this goes back to a proverb. I think it might be an African proverb. It's something to the effect of when a mosquito lands on your testicles, you realize that violence is not always the answer. Yes. And sometimes their attempts to, attack what they think is the problem, they end up hurting themselves. A clear situation. Shout out to Melvin. He writes, tuition, respect for the breakdown of boss mentality. Oh, yes. And we must abide by it. Shout out to Shondell. Writes, I will be purchasing your Master Communicator course in the next week or two. Stupid question. Does it provide your method to move new vocabulary from passive memory to active memory? Also, you mentioned writing being twice as important. Any resource for improving that skill? Yes, practice reading and practice at writing and trying to write for a purpose and seeking to publish it. When you give things purpose, you're going to get better outcomes, especially when you publish things, because then you get feedback and you improve. But everything that you do, you should be asking yourself, well, what for? And in our maturity, especially as men, we realize that the what for is the critical part. Some guys will see me and I'm like, man, he seems like really classy guy. He's articulate. He's charming. How do I speak like you? What for? I know people who are far less humorous, far less charming, far less eloquent, and they've outpaced me. If I could pick between those traits that show well versus the ability to focus intently for long amounts of time, the ability to be comfortable with, dry, tedious problems, I would pick that. I'd forgo and give up being charming, humorous, and all that if I could hyper focus on being great at physics and all of the things that will allow me to be a competent engineer. Yes, those things are much more useful. Like Jeff Bezos, for example. Jeff Bezos is not good looking. He doesn't speak well. Elon Musk, for example, doesn't speak very well at all. He's stammering speech. But if I could choose to have Jeff Bezos's ability to focus, his mathematical abilities, his reasoning abilities, I think I would give up being good looking. I'd give up being charming, and I'd live as a billionaire and also one of the persons who have made one of the most important contributions to modern commerce. So you have to ask, like, well, to what end? And we have to make sure that it is to an end. And that's a part of boss thinking. So, pick your skill set as defined by what is going to be most useful for your outcome. Nothing wrong with being charming. I'm just saying why. Nothing wrong with having a great vocabulary. I think it's probably useful, but who are you talking to? If I go to the neighborhood I grew up in, I could speak in an elevated vocabulary, but who would understand me and to what end? And would that create distance between me and the people around me? There's so many different factors in being a developed person. If I go to the neighborhood I grew up in, I probably won't be speaking in sophisticated language because my goal is to communicate, to be understood, and also to not alienate myself from the people around me. So always backwards plan these things. Shout out to Mark supporting the work. Just became a member on school.com/Marquette. And shout out to Legal Dope. Just started following on Twitch. And I appreciate those of you who do follow on Twitch. Shout out to Carter, writes Peace of the Saints, heavy game. I appreciate you. And the reason I gave that example with Mr. Bezos is because I want you guys to understand that, don't admire me, be you. And figure out if there are things, and this is a lesson in Boston University. It talks about figuring out what about you allows you to be a boss. Like, for example, there's a saint named Josiah, and there's also a saint named Chris. I really admire their different leadership styles because they're both highly effective, but they operate in very different ways. And I've had trips with both of these saints on several occasions. Josiah, you might not hear him speak out in the group very much, but everyone knows him. They highly respect him. They follow him. And he's great at recruiting and growing his section without being very verbal. It's by example. He has a power of who he is and how he operates. Chris, very proactive. He organizes people. I don't know if he's an extrovert. He damn sure seems like one. And he's extremely ambitious and he's living out loud. And that gets him recognition, but he also delivers the good. Some people could talk a good game, but you got to walk it. He's doing both out here. And they're both great operators. And both of these guys, I admire how they operate. And I couldn't operate in the way that either of them operate because of my wiring. I'm wired differently than both of these guys. And so I operate in yet a different way of leading. So what I'm telling you is that there are several ways to win, but you have to figure out which of those is natural and workable for you. Like, for example, if it was Hustle Mania and you guys were hanging out with me, say you spent a week with me, none of you can survive on my sleep schedule. Not one of you. There's not one person. There's 1,000 people watching. Not one of you can survive on my sleep schedule. I already know because I've lived a whole life. I've been around highly competitive people, type A personalities from top universities, top businesses, and I've only ever met one person that can survive on my sleep schedule. I know none of you can do it. So if you try to emulate me, you're going to fail. You're going to lose. But if you figure out how you win, you're going to experience great ease. You can make $1 million the hard way. You can make $1 million the easy way. When you're being yourself, it's the easy way. When you're trying to be someone else or something you see on television, it's going to be the hard way. And so that's why I have 3 sentence Bible. Be yourself, be good to yourself, be good to good people. Some people will never want to be a public speaker. Me personally, when I was younger, I loved public speaking. I always wanted to get out, get that microphone and do my thing because I knew it was a competitive advantage. I knew if I get that microphone, I'm going to beat everybody at it. And then once I did it and I operated in business, I realized that I don't like doing this anymore. It's not a major interest of mine anymore. I don't care. Different maturity, age, and success, I don't care. And then it also came to people pay me tens of thousands of dollars to speak. I don't want to speak for free anymore. You're driven by different things, or you get different reactions, or you realize that, hey, what I do is too valuable to do for free. So Be yourself. Learn your way.
I'm going to force you to admit how fucking stupid you sound. So white people in this country have dominated the socioeconomic, economic, and political power structure for 244 years. An economic corrective action like DEI is only meant to attempt to balance economic opportunity.
Why do you think we've had control for the last 250 years? Because we've been a majority.
Because
what do you
you
think
stole
happened?
this land, subjugated it from the Indians.
And this is what I'm talking about. You're a cultural Marxist. We stole this land. No.
Okay, he says you're a cultural Marxist. And these are terms you hear a lot from the political right. And you'd have to ask them to define it. You know, if I tell the truth about something, I'm a cultural Marxist. What does that mean? And that's an important thing. And the funny thing about a guy like this, there's no doubt that he's not familiar with Marx. I mean, personally, I think Marx is a very doesn't matter what I think. He is clearly a very well-respected intellectual. I don't agree with some bits of what he said, but he has articulated a progression of economies. He's been able to describe macroeconomic progressions and the nature of certain groupings, and he's a profound thinker, no doubt about it. There's a few things that we differ on, and but I, unlike this guy, have read Das Kapital. Not the Communist Manifesto. I've read that, but I'm saying when I'm thinking Marx, I'm thinking Engels, I'm thinking Das Kapital, I'm thinking the real reads. Whereas this guy is just repeating things he's heard from other people on the internet, and that's quite dangerous.
We conquered it. That's way different.
It's the same shit.
It is not.
You discovered some shit that was already here that people were already
nobody
living
had
on. You
control of the full Americas ever.
This is a consistent lie, and this is precisely why when every now and then white folks will DM me. By every now and then, I mean literally every day. They'll DM me and they'll say, "Hey, don't say that Jewish people are white." I'm like, no, I must, because they in fact are white. And if you observe the behaviors, they're consistent. They're a subgroup of white people, just like Nigerians are black, and they're a subculture or a subgroup of black people, but they are black. Nigerians are black, South Africans are black, Ethiopians are black. They're a subgroup. They're a type of black, just like Germans are white, Italians are white, and the people who call themselves Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, are also white. They're a type of white people. And the reason I bring that up is for this. This fellow says, no, when whites got to the Americas, no one was controlling all of it, so we could just take the land. It was free and open to take. That should sound familiar. There's a group of people that said, when we arrived in the Middle East, there was no country called, I can't even say, but it starts with a P. There was no country called such and such Stein. So the land was free and uninhabited. So we just took it over. Both lying, both groups white, both groups lying. And it's repetitive behavior, representative of either genetics and or culture. And so, yes, they are white, and their behavior is also white, if you like.
They were fighting. There were Indian nations fighting over each other. We didn't steal land. We conquered it. Way different. And you should.
We didn't steal land. We conquered it. I don't know if that was as. I think he thought he was cooking with that, but he said we didn't steal land. If you steal something, you take something that doesn't belong to you. And robbing and stealing are different. Robbing, you kind of do to the person's face. They know it's you. Stealing, you kind of maybe do behind their back. They might find out it's you, but you do it behind their back. It's a little more cowardly, underhanded. But neither of them are good. And then you say conquer, which actually is a euphemism for we took it through murder, is the reality of what that means. We took it through murder. So I said we conquered, just to say we killed for it. I think I would have respected you more if you'd have stole it than saying you killed for it. I think I'd have respected you more on the theft side. You're saying you're bloodthirsty killers and you're proud of that? Extraordinary. And this is why we have to regard this group as devils. And in the Black codes, we discuss this mentality. You don't hear this mentality among any other people that are so proud of their killers.
Owe a lot of thanks to people that colonize this land. In fact, you should owe a lot of thanks to people that are white. You're wearing.
And so now he's going on with his white supremacy bit, saying, hey, we're so great. We're so great. You should thank us. You're so great. You benefited from the murder that we committed. So let's all be happy about it. Let's celebrate our killers. Shout out to Ralph. Comes in by Venmo. He writes, support for the best analysis anyone would find. This character, Bo, is just spiraling out trying to defend evil. And that is the problem. And this is not something that all white folks are going to do. You're not going to find every white person is trying to defend evil. There is a good number of white folks that say this is completely unacceptable. I don't agree with this at all. I think we need to rewrite the histories. I think we need to be fair. We need to be inclusive. There's a ton of white folks who say that. And sometimes they're called liberal. Sometimes they're called reasonable. Sometimes they're centrist. Sometimes they're independents. Shout out to Sadie, writes, paying tuition, comprehended and received, new follower. I appreciate you. And shout out to the Lady Saints. And thank you to everyone who supports. And do keep in touch, Sadie. We'd love for you to join up with the Lady Saints if you so choose. Great group of women. We would welcome you warmly to this thing of ours. If you want to get information on the Lady Saints, you can DM at Marquette Devon on Instagram, and we'll make sure that we get you connected with all the information.
A suit that was invented by a white guy, typing from a phone that used the internet, invented by a white guy, a phone that was invented by a.
And this is the same. They made this argument so many times. And the important thing to figure out is we are talking about reparations. None of this is relevant. And also some of your facts are not facts. The internet invented by a white guy. We could explore that, yes. But it's actually not germane to the question of reparations. And while you're talking about invented by a white guy, since we want to play that game, we could play the game of, well, genocide was invented by a white guy. Like we could play that game, but that's irrelevant because the question is of reparations. And so often they go off topic. This actually didn't have to be this long of a discussion if they could stay focused. Now, if I were the host of this, I just let them keep going because at the end of the day, that's running up the bag, right? So there's no incentive to focus them. And this, of course, is an idle conversation or debate. And that's why in the lesson I talked about, there would be a lesson called argument versus negotiation versus action versus consequences. Really important to understand what we're actually doing. You guys are thinking that they're having a meaningful discussion. Really, they're engaging in entertainment. And when you actually understand capitalism, and there are various stages and types of capitalism that operate, you figure out what's going on. You might be thinking you're watching a political debate. Really, you're watching a business making money. Huh? Come on now.
White guy, you benefit from whiteness. So I'm really sick and tired of this argument that, colonize this, colonizer that.
If you go, I'm light skinned, Bo. So if you go far
what
back
does that
enough,
mean?
If you go back far enough in my genealogy, I have white in me as well as black. The point I'm making to you is, one, Columbus discovered some shit that Native Americans were already living on. They killed the Indians. Yeah, conquered the land. They still stole it. Not only did you steal,
yeah, for sure,
the land, you then bring over slaves because you're too lazy to do your own damn work, build your own White House. You have my people build it. Then you.
I don't know if I'd call them lazy. I think that's a mischaracterization. I think that I certainly would not categorize these folks as lazy. Absolutely not. I think that's a miscategorization. Most of the white folks that I've dealt with, now remember, I didn't grow up in a poor white neighborhood. I didn't grow up in the rural poverty. I grew up in a black ghetto, and I grew up essentially around blacks and Mexicans. And so I didn't have any exposure to low-income whites. I started having exposure to whites in general when I went to elite universities, and none of them were lazy. Not one of them. Oppositely, these mofos work and hustle hard, and none of them were broke either. They were all from well-to-do families, and they were working hard like they were broke. You hear me? They were working hard like they were coming from poor families. I promise you that one. I cannot recount one of them that was legitimately lazy. There was one guy who had Lyme disease, and he kind of struck me as lazy, but I think that Lyme disease maybe saps your energy. I think that's how that works.
Subjugate us and treat us as property for 244 years.
Do you
when we
think
attempt to make
Americans
corrective action, let me finish. When economic action is attempted to be installed to correct a severely, ridiculously high economic advantage that people with your skin tone have had for 244 years, now, oh my God, the white people are under attack. No, that's the fragile white fucking ego. That's all it is.
This is why
I see that. I don't know about the cursing. And also, again, it's the black psychology of you owe this or that. And sorry, buddy, nobody owes you anything. And I think that there's a middle ground. I like to think that I represent a reasonable middle ground, which is to say that you got blacks who think people owe them something. Nobody owes you anything. And if they did, they're not giving it to you. And then you got whites who are like, hey, we don't owe you anything. But also, in addition to we don't owe you anything, like low key, we'd like to dominate you. So the middle ground is like, hey, let's all get on in a meritocratic society. But the meritocracy doesn't exist because human beings really don't want a meritocracy. They mostly want advantage. The blacks at some level seek equality. They're a goofy bunch. But most everyone else is actually seeking to be above. And this is human nature. That's why when we run a race or we have the Olympics, you have first place, second place, third place to establish hierarchy. It turns out that in actual fact, hierarchy is more so what human beings pursue. And equality is a fiction. Equality is not a real thing. Almost nothing is equal. I have a brother. We're not the same height. We're not the same weight. We don't have the same temperament. We don't have the same skill set. Very few things are equal.
I also think you're racist.
No, I'm honest.
Yeah, you are.
I'm honest.
You're extremely racist.
Now, the white guy, again, the comedy, the white guy is telling the black guy, I think you're racist. It's like, word, word. Are you not racist? Are we both racist or just one of us is racist? I need to know.
How?
Because you obviously hate white people.
I don't.
You're
Damn.
sitting here complaining about 200.
He said, I have white people in my family, and I believe this fellow because he is definitely fair. And see, again, this is the emotionalism, this is the pettiness. So the white gentleman is now accusing the black guy of being a racist. And frankly, I really don't believe that this black guy is a racist. I really don't. And I don't believe that the white guy views himself as a conscious racist. But I think it is comical, strange, and perhaps a projection that he would accuse the black guy of being a racist. And furthermore, it's curious that when the black advocates for the blacks, the whites call it racist. The white supremacists call that racist. And that's really strange.
50 years of subjugation doesn't mean you don't have any sort of biased or prejudice against them.
Is telling the truth biased?
No, it's not.
Okay, then. So how am I being racist?
Well, you're mad about 250 years of subjugation, and you're willing to sacrifice equality and merit for the betterment of your people over others.
Never said that, Bo. Never said that.
No,
Let me ask
you're
you a question.
exemplifying.
If somebody, your great-great-great-great-grandmother, and then continued to do that to her grandchildren, didn't even claim the kids that they had with your grandmother, then could kill
Hey, that's an L for
someone that looked like you just because you were black, just because you
were black. Is it because you're black or is it because they're hateful? I think that's a more accurate way to state that, but carry on.
You were the wrong color. That would piss you off a little bit?
Do you not think that's happening in this country right now?
Can you
where
answer
they're
that
just
question
killing
first?
Irina Zarutska?
Can you? I'm not.
Oh my
That has
God.
nothing to do with what
I'll be honest.
asked
I
you.
wouldn't know if
And that was very brainless of Bo. He's using a single instance where some mentally ill black fellow took the life of someone who's not a white American. She's actually an Eastern European, a foreigner, in fact, someone who maybe shouldn't have been here, according to the conservatives, if they actually are against immigration, or maybe they're just against the immigration of the blacks or the colored persons. So that was the most bizarre example. And again, the reason that example was popularized in part by the Trump administration is because it was a blonde white woman, even though she's not even an American. She's a foreigner, but it shows you how important race is to the white ruling class, that they favor a foreigner. Her name is Zaruska or something like this. That doesn't even sound like a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, which is what founded this country. So they defend this foreigner, this immigrant, as though she's like one of them, because they're not thinking in terms of nationality. They're thinking in terms of tribe, racial tribe, which is to say whites, a particular type and version of whites. Shout out to Mr. Brown, came in supporting the work via Venmo. Appreciate it. Mass Acknowledge, Heals in support. Good to see you again. Shout out to Robera, who just got the The Big Game Conference. Okay, yeah, you're going to love that one. And that's absolutely critical. I'm glad that you're getting it. I hope that all young men get it before you get too deep into your pursuit of, a woman that you actually want and family, and before you consider marriage and all those things. You really need to have that information. As I've said to you guys many times, our government, our public schools, and our parents, frankly, left us a bit underprepared for some things. You never had a class where it's like, if you're a male, okay, hey, let me have you in this class separated from females, because there's some things you need to know in terms of being a man and how you will mature and what you need to pursue and what you have to achieve in this life. Nor as a female did you have a course where they take you aside and say, hey, you're a woman, you need a different skill set as versus your male counterpart. There's some skill sets you should have in common: arithmetic and reading comprehension and language skills and all this stuff, the ability to do taxes, what have you. But there's some skills you need as a female that are going to help you progress into a wife mother more effectively. And that is what I made the Big Game Conference for. It teaches you how to select women, how to approach women, how to exercise leadership in the relationship, how to prepare for family and children, how to prepare yourself legally, protect assets, deal with divorces, all of these things. It's a great piece of work. Carrying on.
My great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother got, and to be honest, her being years ago, I wouldn't be complaining about it 8 generations later.
What about the fact that when the white American government assassinates a civil rights leader for simply saying, all we say to America is be true to what you're saying on paper?
That's wrong.
Okay, then.
Okay.
So if you know that that's wrong, and that happened one instance times more.
And shout out to Bo for conceding a point. I respect that. And I still think we're off track with the core of the argument. And so what we have in front of our eyes is not a discussion about reparations, but rather what we have are we have a black man and a white man arguing against each other and each other's tribe. I hate to say it like that, but that's what it is. It's a black guy and a white guy arguing against each other's tribe. Has nothing to do with reparations. Most of the conversation has had nothing to do with the concept of reparations. It's a black guy saying, hey, your tribe screwed over my tribe. And it's a white guy saying, hey, yeah, my tribe may have screwed over your tribe, but we're not giving you anything for it, buddy. And we're happy with what happened. Okay. Yeah, I think that the conversation is mostly divisive, mostly unproductive. And I think that's an unfortunate thing. My hope is that my work is mostly unifying of the good peoples of the earth, irrespective of their color, religion, or political affiliation. And I, unfortunately see this conversation, though there's much to learn, but it is unproductive. And there's no doubt that either of these persons probably will not move toward action. And if one does, it'd more likely be the black guy. And there's no doubt that he'd do it within the context of the American government, because you can tell he kind of has that, like, I want to be a politician feel to him. And the white guy is just a race warrior who's not very intelligent. So I think he'll probably just eventually relent to complaining at the local pub about the blacks.
More than 40,000 that's just documented. Would you not be pissed at that? When the nation that your ancestors helped to build wouldn't even give you a fucking birth certificate, you wouldn't be.
So I don't know why you're cursing right now. And I don't know, it's just not necessary.
Be pissed at that?
You got a birth certificate, didn't you?
I didn't. We're not talking about me.
Did your dad not?
No, I'm not going to lie to you. That was funny. Shout out to little buddy.
Did your dad not get a birth certificate?
I wouldn't be. You are not looking at the ontological origin of the problem.
That's not
true. If you can't do that, if you cannot answer a question honestly.
You sound like a 50-year-old man that's mad at his dad for something.
No, my dad is my hero. I would never be pissed at him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm using an example. If you can't understand the example, I can't help understand it for you.
No, actually, Bo, you were not using an example. Maybe you were using like a literary device, like a metaphor or a simile, but an example would be a reference to something that actually happened, whereas you're referring to something that did not happen. So that is not an example, Bo. And again, that's a matter of the IQ. And the comedy is that Bo, in his confidence and his feeling of superiority, he states something that is fundamentally incorrect and then doubles down on it confidently. And shout out to the white guys. The conservative white guys are phenomenal at this. And that's one of their unique advantages.
Sound like somebody that's mad about your dad as a 50-year-old. Like, oh, my dad was a mean guy. You're mad about slavery from 250 years ago. This is ridiculous.
So here's
What you're a victim is what I'm saying.
So are you going to say if I'm a victim? Okay, first of all, let's go. What about me is a victim, Bo?
You wanting reparations, and you've never experienced slavery. You've never experienced segregation.
I've experienced racism.
Can you give me an example of you experiencing racism?
Well, sure. When I was 17 years.
Now, this is an interesting conversation. I really like this conversation because, maybe we all have experienced racism, maybe. But there's no doubt that it'll be different. And there are some of those situations wherein, we know that we can't really empathize or relate to the other side. Like, for example, when I hear women talk about what they go through or what they fear, or just the fact that women often use terminology like feeling safe, I always be like, yo, why do you keep saying that? But I'm a big black guy. Like, nobody ever walks into a situation like, I want to go mess with the big black guy. Like, no one ever says that. So I'm aware that I have not the foggiest idea of how women actually feel being small and, fairly weak. I don't understand at any level. I've never really walked anywhere and thought like, oh, gee, I'm worried about what's going to happen to me. You just never know. Somebody might take advantage. That never crosses my mind. So sometimes it is interesting to hear people express what their reality is. Now, the question is, will they respect what the other person has to say? Right now, they're not debating. Right now, they're theoretically discussing and sharing space for each other to say, hey, this is my experience on earth. Let's see how they honor one another.
Years old, I was in the American Legion puts on an oratorical contest every year. And I know for a fact I was the best speaker. And for the 2 years that I tried it, I made it to the semifinals. And the reason that I lost was because they said that they didn't give a reason. I came in second place to a white woman purely because she was white.
How do you know that?
Because I asked the judges for the scorecard, and we had the same score.
White.
I'm sorry, I take that back. I was actually ahead of her by 1 point, and they gave it to her because they said my speech was not long enough. The length of my speech was long enough, which was a lie. It was 2 seconds over the needed time limit. So that's a direct example of racism. And in fact, what is so interesting is I know it was racist because some of the people that put it on.
That's wrong. And I'm sorry you went through that.
So he did interrupt him, but he said that's wrong. I don't know if it's authentic or not. Who knows? But let's listen.
It doesn't mean you deserve reparations. It doesn't mean every Black American deserves reparations from something that happened over 100 years ago or 250 years ago.
Right. So how would you feel if it happened to your people?
It's happening right now, actually.
How?
I've already laid it out.
No, you didn't. You didn't lay out
policies
shit.
is
All you said was that
you're so angry.
I'm not angry.
You keep insulting me.
I'm not insulting you.
Yeah.
And again, you notice, and it's kind of funny too. They often accuse the blacks of being victim, but you just heard him like, you keep insulting me. And remember, from the beginning of the debate, he started the insults. He's interrupted more. He started the most vulgar episodes, but now he's the victim. So this, we understand that when you accuse someone else of being the victim or you accuse them of being the victimizer, these are both strategies. And very rarely are these authentic accusations. Very rarely.
Yeah, saying that you didn't lay out shit. You did not present an argument that proved that white people, white males in particular, are under stress. Let me tell you something. If you're a white man in America and you are suffering or you're poor, that is your misuse of your privilege.
Same if you're a Black American.
How? That's impossible. If that's true.
I don't know about if it's impossible, but certainly, there are a lot of people missing out on their or not utilizing their opportunities. There's no doubt about that. Do I surmise that probably whites have a better opportunity in the country? Yeah, for sure. Even if there weren't all the historical things, even without that, just the fact that there's numerical superiority, and we tend to gravitate toward people who are similar to us. So even if we had the exact same history, just the fact that they're 60% of the population, while the blacks are 10%. And if he's denying that, Bo, then he's an obvious liar.
true.
See, this is why you're a victim. You think people are still holding you back, and you're
No,
a
I
free
don't.
American.
No, I don't.
In fact,
think
I
people are
think you're
holding
doing
you back.
pretty good. You wear a suit. You came here from Atlanta, Georgia on a flight. You're probably going somewhere else in a day or two. In fact, I think the day I saw you at Jubilee, you weren't just flying here. Then you were flying to San Francisco to meet up with your girlfriend, and then flying back to Atlanta. Seems like you're doing pretty well. So why are you so upset about things that happened 250 years ago? You're playing a victim is what I'm saying.
That's called working twice as hard to get half of what you deserve. That's all that
No,
is.
you're not. You're not working twice as hard as anybody. You look like you have a pretty cool life.
The reality, you have no idea.
Maybe you should learn to accept yourself.
I accept myself great. And that's part of it.
Now, this little bit right here, this is actually a really interesting engagement. And some of these things, unfortunately, we'll never know if it's true. Is he working twice as hard to get half as much? Maybe, maybe not. But it's a fascinating interaction. I think it's worth having. But one thing that's for sure that we just have to know is true, just because of human nature, and not necessarily because a human is white or a human is black, just human nature across the board. If, say, you're white, which would be reflective, what I'm about to describe, reflective of the American society. If you're white and you're ahead, there is nothing on God's green earth that's going to make you want to say, oh, I would like to be equal, which means that I have to lower myself. No one wants that. That's precisely why Bo is here making these arguments. Because whether it's true or not what the black guy is saying, black guy show that side, whether it's true or not what the black guy is saying, Bo must deny it if he thinks that the results of what the black guy is forwarding is going to lower his station such that they can be equal, because fundamentally no one wants to be equal unless you're in the lower position, and equality would raise you up. But if you're in the higher position and equality would thereby lower you, of course you have to deny, of course you have to lie. And maybe you should even claim that you're equal when you're not, so you can maintain your preferred position. No one wants to give up preferred position. No one wants to give up advantage, superiority. It's just not sensible.
Accepting yourself, Bo, is being able to tell the truth. This is where I'm saying that what the
tell
reality.
me when I've lied.
Well, you just said that white males are being currently oppressed, which is
Yes, they are.
If that's true, Bo, then here's a simple question: isn't power an escape tool from oppression?
What is DEI?
Who dominates?
What is DEI?
Diversity, equity, and
what does DEI do?
It is designed to, well, its intent is to mitigate the socioeconomic, economic, and political lack of power that Black Americans have.
And what does that do?
It attempts to restore economic balance.
No. What does it do to white people? It basically excludes them from hiring events and advantages in their own business.
See, not quite accurate. What does it do to white people? Does DEI impact the white female the same way it impacts the white male? No, it doesn't. So white people is actually not a concept with regards to DEI, because DEI will split you demographically, not grouping the white male and female together. So already Bo is actually off track there.
Her job.
If that's true, then let's run the numbers. If what you're saying is true, so in 2026, who currently is more employed between Black Americans and white Americans, male and female? Looking at the last 12 years. This is such a dumb point, because you're asking ChatGPT when the population of white Americans is more than Black Americans. Right.
In fact,
in order to have power, you have to have more of a population than your opponents.
Correct. In fact, I would not even say it's white privilege; it's majority privilege.
Right. So
then why don't we call it that instead of white privilege?
So overall,
because the majority is white. So if you say that it's majority privilege and white privilege, you're still referring to the same group. So the question is, well, why lie, or why be less descriptive? It's just kind of weird, but they're correct that the majority will always have an advantage in general, especially in a system that's called a majority rule system, also known as a democracy or a republic in our case. Probably not a fully functioning democracy, but you get the point. So yes, they will have an advantage, and nobody wants to give up advantage. And that's the thing that we are fundamentally missing. This is the kind of stuff I talk about in the Book of Dark Truths, which is the idea that we're all self-interested. So I cannot suggest that white people are evil or bad because they want to maintain their advantage. We work our whole lives to get advantage as individuals and as collectives. So what the Black guy is essentially suggesting is that the white guy should engage some kind of morality to value equality as a moral principle, which I just don't think that's realistic. And one of the other reasons that reparations as a concept certainly is not going to happen, particularly for the Blacks, because there is a special relationship between the Black and the white. which is different than, say, the black and the Asian and the black, the white and the Asian and the white and the Jew. There's a different relation between the black and the white, especially as it relates to the white ruling class. And we've seen it play out historically. And I do have one lesson in the Black codes called How Other Nations View Blacks. And it's an important thing to understand. And so often the Blacks can't look in the mirror and see themselves, number one. And secondly, the Blacks don't really have an accurate picture of how they're viewed by other nations or other groups or races, if you like.
White Americans are more likely to be employed than Black Americans, and this has been consistently true for decades, including the last 12 years.
Okay.
But when you split by gender, it becomes a little bit more nuanced. White men have significantly higher employment rates than Black men. Going from 2023 survey, Bureau of Labor Statistics, 67.9% of white men were employed, 65% of Black men were employed, but the long-term gap states that there has always been historically at least a 5 to 10 percentage point drop between Black males and white males. Black women are often this is where we actually have some small advantage. Black women are often as employed or more than white women with 60.1.
Yeah, but when you look at the actual earnings, then it's a little bit different. Black women know how to get a job, that's for sure, especially if it's with the government. And that's one of the things that has caused Black women to suffer under the Trump administration, as they cleaned a lot of them out of the government. Yeah, I'm still waiting to see their attitudes adjust as their economic positioning has changed.
1% for Black women, 55.9% for white women. Right now, Black Americans are 2 times as likely to be unemployed as white Americans. So the DEI bullshit you're spewing.
And this is something that is very consistent over time. Since Reconstruction, Black people have always been the last hired and the first fired, and the data verifies that. And there are also legitimate claims as to why. And when you look at educational attainment, and various other factors. Of course, racism could be a variable that you consider, and as well educational attainment. So there's a multivariate explanation.
It's not actually true based on the data.
It is. Because
Black Americans are about 2 times.
You can read from ChatGPT all you want.
ChatGPT, and the source on that is the Economic Policy
ChatGPT is a racist.
The source on that is the
AI
Economic
chat.
Policy Institute.
Great.
Is the Economic Policy Institute
I'm
racist?
glad you were able to do that. Now, look up the article in 2021 when 6% of white Americans were white applicants were accepted and hired by Fortune 500 companies.
I looked at.
So
are you going to say, Bo, that the Economic Policy Institute is lying?
No, I didn't say that. Did I?
So right, you didn't. So why are you now wanting to confine the story to study to 2021 when I gave you a wider range to prove my point?
You actually didn't prove your point. There's plenty of facts out there and plenty of stories now.
Stories, yes. Bo has definitely used some stories, not so much on the facts side, this Bo fellow. Starting to wind down right now, folks. If you have any comments, questions, ties to tuition, please do send it in right now so I can address it before we get out of here.
Allegories coming from writers' rooms in LA where they became more diverse and they stopped hiring white people. They stopped hiring white people for white jobs. In fact, you can't get hired at Netflix as a white man. They ask you if you're gay, black, whatever, pansexual.
What? They ask if you're gay. So that already negates your argument. So, Bo, are you that slow? You said they ask if you're gay, which is to suggest that if you're gay, that will qualify you. So if you were a gay white man, you could be hired based on your logic, which means that race was not your disqualifier.
Or to get hired there. So don't sit here and say that it's not happening. And when I asked you what DEI was, you completely avoided the fact that it holds back white people on purpose. Why did you avoid that?
I didn't.
It did.
I said what its intent.
Listen, this is easy logic. If it gives an advantage to other people like minorities, then it's holding back another group. Is that not true? How is that not true? That's a simple logical point.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Because
there's a program designed to give minorities a benefit.
So actually, Bo, that's not true. So Bo is speaking as though there's a zero-sum game, which is not necessarily the case. If you help one person, that doesn't mean you're necessarily hurting the other person. Or if you help one demographic, that doesn't mean you're necessarily hurting the other demographic, which is to say, for example, if you saw an increase in per capita income in blacks, it doesn't mean you must see a decrease in per capita income in whites. And this oversimplistic, inaccurate thinking on Bo's part is rooting from both low IQ and emotionalism.
it, how does that not hold back another group that is just considered white?
You just refuted yourself with the key word minority. There is no way in the world that you can say that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, which are designed to mitigate and combat, DEI exists because economic imbalance exists.
No, it exists because, and this is going back to you being a cultural Marxist. It exists because we live in a system.
Next.
It exists because we live in a system right now that's pushing towards Marxism more than.
And in this case, Bo's arguments are also very easy to put to rest. You know, again, America is 60% plus white and has always been an overwhelmingly white majority country. So if any decision is made, we must know that it was made with the consent of the white majority. They are in control. And in addition to being in control of the political apparatus, they are also in control of the economic structure. So you'd have to blame them for any changes that you see that you don't like, Bo. You could not blame the minority. It's just not sensible. The minority is not in control, especially not the blacks, because they are financially disempowered. And all the evidence indicates that, and I think Bo knows that. Anyways, ladies and saints, it's been an absolute pleasure at this time to fellowship with you all. Let us end this with our tradition, the creed of the assassin. Repeat after me with full conviction, knowing this is true of you. The creed of the assassin. I am going to be who I truly am because I am remarkable, and I'm going to strive every moment to show the greatest part of who I am. Until next time, peace to the saints.